We're fine, thank you. I want to reiterate what I said at the beginning of this. You can go ahead and sit down, because maybe there are people in the room that weren't in the room before. Everyone who is coming up and speaking cares about this city, and everybody's vision of what the priorities are, how we get there, are going to be different. And I know that people in this room hold their positions very dear to themselves. It's important that everybody have a chance to be able to speak. But we have to let everybody speak, and we have to be respectful while they're speaking. That's kind of who we are in this city. We have to maintain that. The next speaker that's going to be coming up will be Karen Collins. Is Karen Collins here? You'll be at this podium. Sir, thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. I'm here today to show my support for the approval of the APD labor contract. Both the Public Safety Commission appointed by the Council and all of the volunteered citizen review panel have shown their support for this contract for good reason, and I hope that you follow suit. There will always be points of contention by the opposition, no matter how good of a job APD does going forward. Please approve this contract, because if we don't, we could go from being the 5th safest city in the U.S. to the 10th, then to the 15th, and so forth. Let's be proactive in fighting crime instead of reactive. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Coming up to this podium will be Andrea Black. Is Andrea Black here? Yes? Okay, you'll come to this podium. Please proceed. You have 1 minute.
I'm Karen Collins. I live in District 7. Across the street from me are 2 young men in their 20s who are autistic. One of them is nonverbal, and one of them makes a lot of loud, strange noises, and they have abnormal behavior. And I'm so worried that somebody driving down the street or walking down the street is going to be alarmed, and they're going to call the police, and that police officer in that split second, when he has to decide whether he feels threatened, will shoot one of these boys or their family or their caregiver. I worry about this. I understand that the police budget is about 40% of our city monies. What I would like for you to do is vote no on this contract. So I think you need to have better control of this money than once every 5 years. I'd like for you to use that control by helping the police, like helping them emphasize de-escalation and helping them have better trained people they can call on for mental health emergencies and better lab work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Is Kaiba White here? Kaiba White? No? Then what about Brian McGivern? No? Yes? Okay. He would be coming up next. Please proceed.
Okay, thanks. Hi, my name is Andrea Black. I'm a resident of District 1, and I'm also a member of the City of Austin's Equity Action Team that's been helping to develop the city's new equity tool. And I'm here because I want to stress 2 things. I mean, one, as you've heard from other people, we should not be spending $82 million on a police contract that falls far short of our community values of accountability, transparency, and civilian oversight. Instead, this is an opportunity to actually redefine community safety in a comprehensive and holistic way by prioritizing funding for mental health, social services, housing, and after-school programs. Secondly, with the leadership of the Equity Office and the Mayor's Task Force on Institutional Racism, the city is in the midst of a big shift to address our community's long-standing racial inequities. Many of you, city staff, and many community members have put in hundreds of hours of work to begin to tackle this challenge. Until we have the metrics and programs in place, we should not be jumping into a new contract that the city will be locked into for the next 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker coming up will be, is Paulo Rojas here? Is Marisa Perales here? Is Rebecca Sanchez here? Is Candace Vallejo here? Come on down. Is Dave Cortez here? Okay. All right. What was your name, please?
I'm sorry?
What was your name?
Rebecca Sanchez.
Okay, and you have 1 minute.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for having this meeting today, I suppose. My name is Rebecca Sanchez. I am a member of District 3, a district that will be up for re-election very soon. And I am a member, or I work at Grassroots Leadership and a member of Communities of Color United. And actually, I'm very excited that I got to speak because I'm on my way to another meeting, a sanctuary meeting. I don't know if all of you are aware that someone has taken sanctuary in this progressive city. Someone decided that the best solution for them was to stay inside of a church instead of try to live a life out here with the rest of us, that was the best alternative for them. And I understand that, the differences between ICE, police, all of these interactions, but what I'm saying is that as someone who was living here decided that living inside of a church where congregations stepped up to the plate as opposed to living within this city. So I urge you to use your money wisely. There are so many limited resources of all of these people I've already spoken to, especially for those of the undocumented community. And so I'm hoping... All right.
Mr. King, you want to come down and give your name to the clerk? Go ahead.
Great.
Proceed.
Thank you. So, well, with that, I also wanted to say that I've been to a number of city council meetings. This is one of the few times that I've spoken up, but there are so many conversations around money, and I don't know how much more you all go outside of the city, but it's looking more and more like the Domain everywhere that you go. And I haven't been able to shop at the Domain in years. So I want you to know that the city is unaffordable, so I'm hearing those things from the police, but what does that do for us? Where's our viability as well? We would like to remain living in here as well. We would like to remain living in District 3 as well. So I want you to hear that, and I want you to know that you have an opportunity to place value, you have the opportunity to show folks where your priorities lie. And if it doesn't lie within making sure that people feel safe in how they live their day-to-day lives, not trapped inside of a church all day, then please take that upon yourself to make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's a little after 6. Let me go back and see if any of the people are here that we called earlier. I think that Kenneth Thompson, number 6, had already spoken. Is Bishop Lands here yet? Is Gus Pena here? Dusty Harshman? What? He's spoken? Oh, that's right. Thank you. And then Cassandra Champion has spoken. So number 12 and number 13 have spoken. Is Lauren Ortel here? What about Candace Ayler? All right. So there were 2 people that donated time to Miss Ayler. Pamela Brubaker, is she here? She had to leave. Okay. And what about Eric Bird? Yeah, I can give her for Candace. Eric Bird, I'm sorry. For Candace, and you want to? Will you give the clerk your name? All right. So was Eric Bird here? So you have 2 minutes with the donated time with the person that's coming down now, Miss Ayler.
I'm sorry, what is the total time?
2 minutes. 1 minute for you, 1 minute for the donated time.
Oh, okay. So my name is Candace Ayler. I'm the Mental Health Policy Lead for Austin Justice Coalition. I've talked to y'all about this issue during the budget hearings, and my position hasn't changed. I absolutely stand with the community and the voices that have come before you today from the community asking that you not approve this police contract as it's written. Since I have a very limited amount of time, I do want to share with you some information about the burden on our community. A lot of people in our community don't realize that there is a part of our homeless population, part of the population of people that have mental health needs are coming from a place called the Austin Transition Center. It's right off Valle. One of the buses, I think 320, goes to it. But a lot of those people that are there that are trying to reintegrate into society are often coming into our community because the conditions there are awful. Now, we can't do anything about that place. But what we can do is think about how we can prevent the need for so much policing. And I think that those are, there are tons of opportunities for the money that would be saved from not approving this contract as is, and addressing the housing needs of this community, and in particular, the housing needs of people that have recidivism through our mental health system would be a priority need. I would respectfully also mention that when you say that all of the people that are in Austin care about Austin and care about the people here, I do have to respectfully disagree when an officer tells Breon King that people of color, that black people have violent tendencies and that's what's wrong. That person doesn't care about all of the people in this city. So not everybody here that is speaking to you, I believe that some of the people speaking to you also hold those types of beliefs. So I just wanted to respectfully add that point of clarification, and I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker that we have, I'm going to call her name is Kaipa White in the room. Is Brian McGivern in the room? Paula Rojas. You had some time that was donated to you. Catherine Collette. She here? No? It's all right. Didn't see you. Thank you. Is Julia Mandel here? You have 3 minutes, Ms. White.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm here on behalf of Public Citizen tonight, and we are asking that you send this contract back for further negotiations. From everything that I understand about this issue, what is being asked here is very reasonable measures to ensure greater accountability and transparency amongst the people who are being paid to serve and protect our community. I do not think that this is an issue of all police officers being bad or evil, or even all police officers having behaviors that are wrong, but there are problems in our community, and you've been hearing about that. And I want to share that I was recently part of an event to hear from some students who are part of Generation Citizen, and they go into schools and they are doing civics lessons in a real proactive way, where kids actually take an issue and research it and try to actually organize and advocate on it. So it's real hands-on. And I was very excited for this and looking forward to all the different kinds of projects that I would see. And I did see some variety, but I was really shocked that I would say 3/4 of the projects were focused on some sort of problem with interaction with the police or immigration officials. These kids are obviously feeling this at home at a very real level. That is what they are coming into school thinking about. That is on their minds. They're worried if their mom or their dad or their aunt or their uncle is going to be in some way accosted by police, perhaps for no cause. And there was one girl who really stuck out. She was telling me about how and telling us, our whole group, this was part of their presentation, telling us their personal stories, and hers was about her aunt getting thrown to the ground for no reason by a police officer. And she started crying right there in front of us, and she was so embarrassed. And, we, of course, we're trying to, be kind and not call attention to it. But what stuck with me is we should be embarrassed. We should be embarrassed that a child should go to school worrying about that kind of thing. And I hoped that I could encourage some of these kids to think about some environmental issues, because, that's what I work on. But how can I ask a kid to do a project on, reducing their carbon footprint or recycling more, something like that, when they're not even sure if they, and some of these stories were about their fellow students being accosted, that they or their families or their friends are in physical danger in our community? It's impossible. And we have all of these environmental goals, and I am here partially to speak as an environmental advocate, so I want to make this connection. We have these goals that we say, I'll wrap it up, that we say we need participation from everybody in the community to meet. We are not going to get that if we cannot meet basic safety and quality of life needs of everybody.
Thank you.
It's all connected.
Thank you. Is Melanie Rodriguez here?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you come down?
Cortez is also back in the chambers.
Why don't you come on up then to the podium? Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Detective Melanie Rodriguez, and I work in the Child Abuse Unit. I investigate people who have sex with children. It is a bad job to have, but I do it with my heart because it's important. When I first came to the Austin Police Department 20 years ago, my first month in, my FTO was shot in front of me. We ran towards the gunshots that day. He got shot after that, and I'm still here because this job is important to me. What I would ask of each of you is not to push this off onto a resolution. Whether you support it or not, vote, because I want your names on the record. Everyone in this city needs to know who supports the police and this community, and your name needs to be on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. We have, I think, about another 130 some odd speakers to go. Mr. Cortez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dave Cortez, environmental justice organizer, community organizer. I organize every day for clean air and justice in this community for all people. And there's no way that we can attain that if certain types of people are being oppressed routinely and viciously by the Austin Police Department. I will say to the previous speaker, we'll take that fight and we'll take that challenge. There's more of us than there are of you, and we are better organized. And I'll speak on. I want to speak to that because I think it's important that people out here in the community know that we got their backs and we're committed to long-term change. But I do want to call in that in 2011 and 2012, many of you were not on this dais, but some of you were active in the community, that we have never had a chance to hold Austin Police Department accountable for Art Acevedo and Commander Jason Dusterhoff ordering their paid police to infiltrate Occupy Austin and subvert and put people in jail simply for speaking out and redressing their grievances. This is an accountability process, what's going on right here, and we will follow it till the bitter end, I assure you. And please put some accountability on these folks. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we're looking at the additional names, Monique Noblesse, I have number 24 already having spoken.
Monique can't make it.
Brian McGivern, Paula Rojas. Is Jen Ramos here? Is Colby Duhan here?
I'm here.
Okay. You have some time donated by Hannah Mitchell. Is Hannah Mitchell here? No?
I think she is outside.
Do you want to wait for her to come, or do you want to speak for 1 minute?
I can wait for her, or if anyone else wants to donate.
I can donate.
All right. Would you give your name to the clerk, please? Mr. Dunn, you have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I want to start off by actually thanking Councilmember Alter for the call to bring more members into the chamber.
I'm Hannah Mitchell, and I'm here to donate my time.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
When I first got in here, we were falsely told that the chamber was at occupancy, which was certainly not the standard at the last State of the City address. So I wanted to ensure that that was known, that that was certainly not the standard last time I was in this chamber. Mayor and council members, my name is Colby Duhan. I am the president of the Austin Young Democrats. And I see a few members up on the dais today, and certainly some champions of our organization as well. I come before you today because our organization has spoken with one unified voice and unanimously endorsed a no vote on this police contract. I have copies for each of the council members that I'll turn into the clerk as well. I can tell you our executive board rarely does anything unanimously, but frankly, this was not a hard decision for us, as we saw how few of what was originally 17 reforms, then 8, were actually included in the proposed contract. One reform included is simply not good enough, and an affront to the incredible organizations represented today who have put their blood, sweat, and tears in a more equitable and just contract. I'd also like to address the false narrative that's been thrown around today that pro-equitable reform means anti-cop. Frankly, I don't really understand the mental gymnastics it takes to reach that conclusion, and it's something I'm not able to wrap my head around. All we're asking for today is a no vote so that we can all join you back at the table to ensure that real reform can take place. And make no mistake, we will support those that stand shoulder to shoulder with us today to bring meaningful change to the broad and inherent racism and bias that not only institutes in our criminal justice system, but in our everyday lives as citizens of Austin. We ask you to answer the call of a greater city, one who advances the interests of one and all and shows the nation the Austin we all aspire to be. We strongly urge you to vote this contract down and vote equity up. I would also speak to the gentlelady's point before. We certainly are watching these votes. I know many of you will be joining us in a few months once the filing deadline rolls around to ask for our support and our endorsement. You'll start showing up to our meetings. Just know that anyone who votes no on this contract will be asked to explain that in depth to our membership before we can give you our support. Thank you so much.
Council, I'm going to go till 6:30 with some of these names and then recommend that we take a break for dinner. Next speaker that we have here is Joey Gidseg. Mr. Gidseg here. I'm sorry? Coming in? Okay. Is Roy Cathay here? Roy Cathay? So, Mr. Gitzig, you'll just have 1 minute. Is Mike Lewis here? Mike Lewis? You'll be up next. You can come down to the other podium.
Hello. I was talking with my friend, Officer Nonweiler, out there. We used to do restorative practices circles in the community, and it's really interesting to catch up. He's a cool guy. I like him, and I wish other people thought the way he did. But here today, what I want to talk to you about is problem solving. Because I know that I'm not the only person that's ever had a problem and have had to search to find a solution. I mean, I know that all of us have on both sides here, and it's a very common thing, problems, right? So you have to think about, how do you solve a problem if you don't know what's causing the problem? In this case, we kind of do. But then you need to actually be willing to look at the options for solving it, and then you have to act on it. And if you don't act to implement it, what happens? Nothing happens. And the thing is that we believe that the reason why you are in the seats that you are in is because you like public service and you want to help. But we have to see you actually do something to do that. So thanks.
Thank you. Mike Lewis. Is Roy Woody here? Roy Woody? No? What about Courtney Sigetavari?
She was outside.
She's outside. What about Clorin Williams? Okay, they should start working their way in. Andrew Costigan? Those people outside, come on in. Andrew, you'll be at this podium. You have 1 minute.
Thank you, Mayor Adler. I'm Mike Lewis. I'm a constituent of Mayor Pro Tem Kathy Tovo in D9. I grew up under the roof of a police officer who then became a sheriff deputy, and then he became a municipal court judge. So I have a great respect for people in the line of duty. I'm also a former Air Force officer, and I've had some good experiences with the police department. My car got stolen, and they found it. And so, there's plenty of good things that can be said. At the same time, though, we have to be very, very cognizant about what it really means to have accountability and what it really means for a citizens review panel to have teeth that can actually do something. So what I'm here to talk about is the Travis County Democratic Party. We had a policy committee. I'm a member of that. I'm not here speaking on behalf of the Democratic Party, but I will say that policy committee, it was talked about several times today that there were opportunities for community input on this police contract. Well, guess what? We also had an opportunity for input from the law enforcement community, and this was a 4-hour meeting on a Saturday afternoon when the activists did show up, and the law enforcement community did not show. So it sounded like they were not interested in that input process. I'm urging you to vote no on this. Chief Manley called us a progressive police force. Progressive is also the name of a car insurance company. So think about what that really means. Let's do something about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Introduce yourself for the record, if you would, and if speakers whose names I've called have walked into the room, please make sure that, I know you can come down to the clerk, and we'll make sure that you get called. Please, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Andrew Costigan. I'm a graduate student at the University of Texas in educational psychology and also a lecturer at UT. I'm also a member of Austin DSA. I urge the City Council to vote no on this union contract, echoing the rationale of other individuals and organizations represented here tonight that have stated that this contract does not provide sufficient accountability and transparency. Furthermore, I think the Council should consider also echoing the calls of others and a shifting public consciousness at the national level, the ways in which public resources can be applied to improve safety in communities. From my perspective as an educational psychologist operating with a framework oriented towards social justice, these resources could be more effectively applied in pursuit of public safety towards public education, mental health services, including drug addiction, rehabilitation, and economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. If anybody has walked into the room whose name I called when they were outside, would you come on down to the podium?
I'm Courtney Sigaperi. I'm donating my time.
To who? Make sure. Okay, let the clerk know who you are.
My name is Clorian Williams.
Mr. Williams, you have donated time here, so you have 2 minutes. Please give the clerk your name. 2 minutes. Was there anyone else donating time to you?
I'm not sure.
Okay. You have, someone is. Would you give your name to the clerk? You have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, my name is Clorian Williams. I'm here on behalf of Texas Advocates for Justice and the community of Austin also. My brother is Lawrence Parrish. He was shot April 7th over 9 times of 2017 by the Austin Police Department. My brother was shot 3 times in each upper shoulder, 1 time in each hand, once in the eye, and once in the nose. My brother survived. In less than 30 hours, he was placed under arrest and pulled into a psych ward of the Valle jail complex. This cell has no beds, just padded walls. So I can imagine the pain that he's been going through in the process of trying to heal. Not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 4 officers from different backgrounds lied about this incident. New video footage will surface soon and show the world that new training and technology cannot fix the integrity of this police department. Now, please, congregation, I come to you. This is the voice of the community. This voice may sound loud, arrogant sometimes, or even proudful. But this voice is strong because it comes from far, far, far away. Seas and other lands of innocent blood of my people that's been prayed is coming through my voice. And I ask that this panel of power and wisdom Don't just stand here and look at me and hear me, but listen to the department that you're considering renewing and listen to the words out their mouth. The chief of police said that if the police monitor fails, then he fails. Well, Chief, I'm sorry to tell you, you failed. Your police monitors have failed us, and so forth. I've watched different and numerous countless people come and represent this side, and even the black man that just left told you that people sagging and looking like me don't deserve a chance. I don't even know if you heard it. And black woman, I applaud you for where you came and how you got here. But I think you need to look for a department with lesser money and high integrity. Yeah. This department has misused our money for far too long, and they've misused our people. They have also registered as a nonprofit organization and has misused $17.5 million. We don't need to give them another 5 years to misuse more money. We've already neglected our children. We have no more parks, no more schools. With that $106 million contract that you just promised us, you just took away for us to have somewhere to stay and live, well, we don't anymore. So for all the mics of your organization and the ones who love to travel and have fun and get married and live their dreams, well, while y'all coming together on that side, y'all destroying communities on this side.
Sir,
that's all I got to say. We both know.
Is there anyone else here whose name I called? Anyone else in the room whose name I called? In that case, then we'll go ahead and we will break now for dinner. It is 6:30. Do you want to come back at 7:15? 7:30? What time do you want to come back? 7:15? We'll be back at 7:15. We stand in recess. All right, Counsel, we have a quorum. It is 7:40. We're going to gear this back up. I think the Council wanted to start with Ed Fanino. Why don't you come on up and talk to us? You've handed out given to Council a note that addresses cost. We also asked you to compare your numbers to the numbers we got from the APA. If there's a difference, and tell us what the difference is.
So does everybody have the handout? Because we can't find the file right now on the computer. Looks like this. It was I think Mayor might be. If you wanted to take a few speakers, we could come back to it. I had given the file to our tech, and it's disappeared. So we just need to get it reloaded.
Okay.
Just take us a few minutes, and it'd be easier to have it on the screen.
Okay, we can do that, and we can.
Yeah, but I'd like to be able to put it up on the screen.
If he wants an electronic version,
like this.
email to him.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem?
Mayor, I just wanted to, earlier Chief Manley was talking about the demographics that he had supplied my office with, and I am now handing that out. So not to be confused with Mr. Vanino's memo, but that's the information from the police department.
Great, thank you.
Could we ask the questions about this step?
I'm sorry, so we'll do some speakers, and then we'll do a couple speakers here while Ed finds the file, and then we'll come back to Ed. Okay? So, we're going to pick this up the way that we had before. We have 5 speakers on each side that are going to get 3 minutes. Anyone donating them time donates 1 minute. And 5 on each side. Those 10 people will get 3 minutes. Everyone else gets 1 minute to either speak or to donate. The 5 speakers that are speaking against are Reggie James, Chris Harris, Jarrett Keith, Scott Henson, and Deborah Alemu. The 5 people that are speaking for are Chad Martin, Mike Enders, Andre Porter, Pedro Luerio, and Scott Gunter. We're going to go ahead and begin. First person to speak is going to be Chad Martin. Is Chad Martin here? I think there's some people walking in. Is Chad Martin here? Then what about Mike Enders? Okay. So Mike, you're going to be our first speaker. Second speaker is going to be Reggie Jones. Is Reggie Jones here? James. Gotcha. Sorry about that. And Mike, did you have anybody donating time to you?
No, sir.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Thanks for having me, Counsel. For the last about 10 months, I've pretty much devoted my personal time, my life to this process. Someone earlier mentioned that we were looking for crowdsourcing, and I can assure all of you that we've crowdsourced more than anyone can imagine. There were 8 main recommendations that Mr. Moore and some other groups recommended to us, and I can assure you that throughout the process, we paid attention to those 8 recommendations. And at the end of the day, I believe we incorporated about 7 of them. One of them, I believe, couldn't be incorporated because it may have been against the Texas Open Records Act. So for some things we couldn't bargain on because they were outside of our scope. Things we're allowed to bargain on are restricted to Chapter 143 in particular. So things like the Texas Open Records Act, we can't bargain around that. But I can assure you that those 7 things that we did incorporate into our final contract, we believe in them wholeheartedly. We support them. We support transparency, especially with the Monitor's Office. A lot of people have said that the Monitor's Office, or that there's a lack of transparency. The Monitor's Office, when it says in our contract that they have unfettered access to our records, it means unfettered access. Anytime someone goes before Internal Affairs to hear a dispute or a claim, the monitor sits in the same room, right at the same table. They hear from all witnesses, they hear from all officers, and they're privy to all Internal Affairs discussions. So as far as our transparency goes, it's about as good as it can possibly get. And especially in this new contract, members of the Citizen Review Panel can sit there and also watch the same thing that the Monitor's Office watches. So I've come here tonight to just ask for your support. When we read down into the details of the contract, there's far more transparency than what's being said out loud. I've been listening all night. No one yet has brought up something that's in Chapter 143 that they believe is better than what's in our contract. And it's my belief that there is nothing in Chapter 143 that's better than what's in the contract for the city, the citizens, or the officers. So all I did was come here tonight and just ask for your support for the contract. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is Gina Curtis here? You'll be at this microphone. Go ahead, sir. Did anyone donate time to you?
Yes.
Who donated
Not
time
sure
to you?
I know who.
Reggie?
I think there's one that
Had you at Thomas Harrison? Thomas Harris. Okay. You have 4 minutes.
Okay.
James.
I'm Reggie James. I'm the director of the Lone Star chapter of Sierra Club. I'm appearing here today on my own behalf, although I do strongly agree with the comments that Kaiba White, who represented Public Citizen, made about the intersectionality of environmental justice and criminal justice and policing. I think we have a long way to go to get there on all of those counts. But I mentioned that I'm here on my own behalf, and I'm here because I've always felt strongly about these issues. When I was a kid, my father had with me what's known as the conversation in the African American household. And it's my dad explaining to my brother and I that we can't do a lot of things that our friends did because we're going to be viewed differently by law enforcement, by other authority figures, by teachers. So gauging the same behavior, you're going to get treated differently, and I don't want you coming home in a box. And so I reluctantly had to have that same conversation with my son. Didn't really think, we don't always have that conversation with our daughters. And I kind of wish that we had more of those conversations with our daughters. What brings me here personally is that I'm very close family friends with Morgan Rankin, who was killed by police last spring or late winter. And I don't know exactly what happened. I don't think anybody other than the people that were there know exactly what happened. So I can't exactly judge, but I know that I questioned what happened. And when you get through a situation with that with somebody that you love very, very deeply, who's a very close family friend, I babysat her. She was raised with my kids, and I saw her just a week and a half before she was killed. She came over to the house kind of out of the blue, hung out for a while. She was kind of feeling out of sorts, and she had some pretty serious emotional problems, but she was just the sweetest human being that ever lived. So, of course, I'm going to have questions about what happened, and I'm going to be feeling like something different could have happened. This is why I so strongly am in favor of having a citizen oversight committee with teeth. I think there has to be oversight. We can't let the police themselves. They've got a full-time job keeping me safe, and I respect them for that, and I support them for that. But they have a culture, and they have a culture of protecting themselves. And that's true everywhere. That's not just true in Austin. That's a cultural problem that we have, and it's a problem that we have a solution to. We do have to have very close oversight. There has to be transparency, and it has to have teeth. In a situation that I described of questioning what happened with Morgan, we're all going to be sad, and we're going to be sad for a long time. But I don't want to be sad and angry. I want to be in a situation where I have some confidence that somebody reviewed what happened, if mistakes were made, if it could have been done better, that we'll learn something from that, and next time we'll do it better. So I don't want to go on too long about that, but I'm very emotional about it because it really hit deep in my family and in my circle of friends. And I know that something can be done about it. I also want to comment on, this is kind of a unique situation, having a contract that has these kinds of provisions, both the dollar amount and the protection from scrutiny. No other profession gets that. And I understand that police are fairly unique in our culture, but no other profession gets that. Firefighters don't get that. No one else does. So I think we should be careful about the money that we're spending, because it could be allocated to a lot of other uses that might prevent the thing that becomes a problem later. So I appreciate your time, and please do not vote no on this, please.
Thank you. Gina Curtis, you can go ahead and start. And then, go ahead.
And do I have 3 minutes?
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. My name is Gina Curtis, and I am a lieutenant with the Austin Police Department and have been with the department now for 27 plus years. When I started in this career path, in this calling in life, we did not have a contract. We were under civil service. And it took the first 10 years of my career before we went into a contract. And I will tell you that there have been great gains made over the time that I've been with the department to evolve our contract to what we have today, to provide our community with oversight, to help us police ourselves. We are by no means perfect, but I would implore you to look around this room, our community, and our nation, that we all need to work together to police one another. So with that being said, you pay for and you get what you pay for. And what I mean by that is, look at some of the cities before us: Baltimore, New Orleans, Detroit, Washington, D.C. They've divested in their public service, in their first responders, in their police. And from that, they have increased crime rates. They have actually taken steps backwards. We are very proud here in the Austin community that we are a community with a very low crime rate. Look around us. Not many cities can say that, But we do that, we come together not only as a public safety entity, but with our community. We are a collaborative community working together. And I will just say that if you vote no on the contract today, which you may very well do, that we're going to be taking steps back in time. Does everyone in this room realize that without a contract, we lose most everything that we have before us? We go back to zero. Do you want that to really happen in this community when we have worked for 2+ decades to get where we are today? I don't think so. So take a hard look. Digest the information. Yes, there is a cost associated with being safe, being able to call ourselves one of the safest cities in the nation. Not everybody can do that. We don't have shootings every day of the week. You can go into Washington, D.C. or Baltimore, and every day there are shots fired. There are people dying. That is not the case here. We have something to be very proud of, and we need to keep moving forward with that. So please, I ask you, think about it. You have to go with your hearts. All of us do. But I'll tell you this much. If we don't have a contract, it's going to have a domino effect, and the services rendered to our citizens is going to become limited because we will not have the ability to provide the same services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed Van Eno is able to go ahead and talk to us now, so let's call him up.
All right, I think we have the technical difficulties worked out. I'm going to first bring up a slide in response to Councilmember Alter asked us to actually put together a slide that shows the current step system. And the dollar amounts on here, the annual salaries, are our current pay program, what officers are receiving today. It's not reflective of the contract, but the percentages wouldn't change. So after you've been an officer for 1 year, your first step is 12% increase. After 2 years, there's a 10% increase. In the 6th year, you get a 7%. 10 years, there's another 7% step. 14 years, a 7% step. And then after 16 years, a 7% step. And that's how our current step system works. There's no changes to that step system in the contract. But these are base wage percentage increases over and above wage, the 1%, 2, 2.5, and 3 base wage increases that are in the contract. So this step system exists now. It wouldn't change, and it just shows you the impact, the impact on salaries over time. And so that salary scale would increase as the base wage increases go up. So a 1% increase is going to move this scale up 1%. In year 2 of the contract, another 1% increase would move the salary scale up 1%. But I think that's responsive to the one item you asked to see.
May I just clarify?
Yes, ma'am.
That these steps are on top of any annual base increases that would happen. So if you get 1% in 1 year and it happens to be that you're in
Yes.
getting the 10-year step, then you would get that 1% and you'd get the 7%.
Right.
Thank you.
So now if you could bring up the other slide with lots of numbers and colors. And this is the information, the same information that I sent out in a memorandum about 2 p.m. today. This was a request we received for some additional information yesterday afternoon. There's a lot of numbers on here. I'm going to suggest that we just focus on the bottom column. And so the progression of this is, what did our 5-year financial forecast look at the time of our financial forecast way back in April of this year? And then how would it look under these the contracts that have been approved for fire and the contract that's on the table for APA. The green one and the orange one are just a progression. So right back in April, we did an initial financial forecast. By the time we got to the proposed budget, a variety of things had changed, and we updated our forecast. The orange one just shows from the time staff proposed to what council adopted. The numbers changed some more. And then the bottom one is what I'd really like to focus on, is what does our 5-year financial forecast look like based upon the budget that council approved, which made assumptions about where the police and fire contracts would land versus where they actually landed, or where the fire contract landed plus this proposed budget for APA. So the first column is looking at fiscal year 2018. So the total city budget with these contracts in place would be just over $1 billion, $1,023 million. The police budget would be $401 million and some. That's 39% of the general fund. So you've heard speakers today talk about police being 40% of the general fund budget, and that's about what it has been. It's 39.2% of the general fund budget is for the police department. The line below that then shows the revenues at the rollback rate and the variance between those two. So long story short, on the bottom there, we're showing what are we projecting the city's surplus would be relative to our costs, not only for fiscal year 18, but into the future. So just momentarily going back to the orange one, you would expect in fiscal year 18 our budget was balanced. There was zero variance. The budget that we had was exactly balanced to our revenues, but now in that light blue one at the bottom, we would be projecting a $3.3 million surplus. And that's because the fire contract came in below what we had assumed it would in the budget. And the APA contract that's on the table right now, that's before you right now, is a little less expensive than what we assumed in the budget. And then you can see as we forecast out, we made assumptions about these contract costs in all years of the forecast as well. And so as we forecast out, we would project, if the city were to stay at the rollback rate, which I'm not saying you will, but the maximum revenue we would anticipate to have at the rollback rate relative to what our projected budget cost increases would be, we would project a positive delta between those two of $37 million by the 5th year of the contract. I think before I go on to more numbers, maybe I'll address Councilmember Flanagan's question.
So I just want to make sure I understand that in this fourth section, the percent of the budget that is the police force increases, albeit slightly, but it is increased over time. I'm not a fan of percent of the fund as a metric. I've been pretty vocal about that as we've gone through this process. I think we should be measuring how much we spend money in departments based on their outcomes, not based on their percent of the money. But even if you use that as a metric, these base contracts increase its percent of the fund over the 5 years. That's one thing. Am I reading that correctly?
You are.
Okay, thank you. And then the variance row, which you characterized as a surplus, which you said, to be fair, Mr. Venino, you did say, but I just want to highlight, it's only a surplus to the extent that we are maxing out the tax bills for the community.
That's
right. We are hitting 8%. We are not increasing homestead exemption. We are not increasing senior exemption.
Right.
That we're can you just say briefly what the sales tax assumptions are in terms of revenues?
The sales tax assumptions, I believe, are annual growth of 3%.
So it also assumes that sales tax revenues will increase 3%
yes.
in each of these 5 years. So there are some broader economic trends that are being assumed as well.
And it's assuming we're going to be able to stay at an 8% revenue cap, which, depending upon state actions and future legislatures, we may not.
So it may also be possible that the revenue is significantly lower, either because we chose to charge a smaller tax rate or because the legislature legislatively limited our ability to hit that rollback rate.
And so, the basis of this question was largely, can we afford the contract that's before us right now? Does it fit into our budget? And the answer to that is yes. The budget that we put in place for fiscal year 18, it can afford the cost of this contract. And under our assumptions that, we'll get 3% sales tax growth, that the state will allow us to continue to go to an 8% revenue cap on our property taxes. That's what this forecast is kind of looking at. What's our maximum revenue trend versus our budget forecast incorporating the cost of these contracts? And the bottom line of all these numbers is we are projecting we can afford the cost of this $80 million contract cumulatively over the next 5 years. The next thing we're asked then is, well, what implications does that have for our ability to fund additional officers?
Well, I have another question first.
Yes, ma'am.
Hang on.
Okay.
Yes, Kitchen.
Okay, so on this numbers then, particularly the 3.3, this doesn't account for anything we may end up doing with EMS, does it?
So our budget assumptions and our forecast assumptions did make assumptions about the EMS contracts, but we don't know what those final contracts will be.
So the
We don't know.
3.3 could be less.
Could be less, yes.
The other thing that when we during our budget, when we got to zero earlier, we also talked about the fact that we had potentially would be doing a budget adjustment in the middle of the year.
Yep.
And we actually talked about some deferred and actually deferred some items. For example, I talked about victim assistance officers or staff, I should say, in the police department. Others talked about other items. So this 3.3 doesn't account for any budget adjustment that we have signaled that we may need to make, right?
The 3.3 does not count for that, no.
Okay.
And none of these numbers account for any other actions council may wish to do.
Okay. So I just wanted to point it out because I would argue that we actually don't have 3.3 now, which has an impact on the projection over the 5 years. So thank you.
Mr. Trexler.
I think this might be where you're going, but I want to understand what our capacity is to add new officers. So this, what you just outlined, is basically, it looks like the percentage of the general fund stays the same, and we're assuming an 8% property tax increase every year. But does this include adding new officers?
These numbers don't. The next slide will.
Oh, okay.
So maybe just real quick to kind of reiterate what some people have been saying. If you look at that first line on the light blue box, it says total budget, and that total budget grows from fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 19. That's the budget we have today, but slightly a little bit lower because of the police and fire contracts being a little bit less expensive than what we had assumed. And then forecasting those costs forward into the future. So taking into account some projections about civilian wage increases, the cost of these contracts over time, making assumptions about insurance increases, but it doesn't assume, we're not building into this forecast any new funding for the Housing Trust Fund. We're not assuming we're going to change or increase the senior exemption or the homestead exemption. We're not projecting that we're going to increase funding for health or human services or any of those other council initiatives that you've identified as being priorities. We're not making any assumptions about that. What we're saying is the current budget is a certain dollar amount, and the cost of that budget will grow out into the future. And then we're taking into account these contracts and comparing it to what is the maximum revenue we would project at the rollback rate. The next slide, then, I take all that and I say, okay, now let's start thinking about if we wanted to add officers, what does that look like? But I think
Before
I have
you
more
get to
questions
that
on
next
this.
slide, Mr. Gassar, you had your hand raised. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, so I appreciate your clarification on that front. The one thing you didn't mention was any anticipated expenses because we have to add staff because of, regularly when we get a budget, there are, like in this last budget, there was some additions to the budget that came from the manager's office that are besides the traditional cost drivers of cost of living increase or what have you, but what you're saying is it would be all of the. I'm trying to understand whether this is all of that money, or if it's netted out.
Those things are
anything
not
besides it's netted out insurance. This is cut out insurance, the cost of living, some level of cost of living adjustment and that stuff, but it does not include anything programmatic.
It does not include any programmatic enhancements, any department requests, any new council initiatives. It's just what we're funding today, the number of staff we're funding today, and making basic projections into the future about what that cost structure will cost us in the future.
I understand that now. I'm sorry we had to make it triple clear, but
it's important.
It helps me understand what it is.
Probably just because I wasn't clear the first two times.
No, that's okay. So even if council has voted, for example, that we want something to continue happening over the course of the next few years. So, for example, we opened the central library, so we had to add staff to that library. That
is in there.
I understand the central library is, but I'm using that as an example, so I'm not picking on anybody's particular pet issue. Even if council has voted that we want something to occur over the course of the next year or 2 or 3 years, that is not plugged in. That would be competing with what the bottom line number here.
That's absolutely right. And the bottom line number there kind of gives you an indication of if there was a desire to go to the rollback rate every year, then you would have that kind of gives you an indication of how much wiggle room would you have to fund those new initiatives, those things you just talked about.
That's
one of them being the community policing matrix study.
Exactly, and that's and I think it's just fine for you to have laid it out this way. It's just helpful for me to understand what it means. So thank you for explaining it.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Kitchen.
And also, and yes, thank you for presenting this. So, this would not, just to clarify, you answered part of my question before, but just to clarify, so this wouldn't include our EMS at all in terms of any, at this point in time, we haven't completed any discussions with EMS. So in terms of any potential increases to EMS over time, this doesn't include that, right?
Well, we did reserve some funding in our fiscal year 18 budget and in the out years of the forecast, honestly just making our best educated guess about if we were to get to a contract with EMS, how much would it cost us to get to that contract.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
We've not got into a contract yet, so I don't know if we'll be higher or lower than what than the guesses we've made.
What about our employees? Does this assume a certain raise for our employees over each year?
Yeah, we are assuming 2.5% wage increases for our employees.
Okay.
That's what council approved for this year, and we're assuming that in the out years as well.
Okay.
Actually, I think it's 2.4. I'm sorry, it's 2.4.
Okay, go to the next
Does
page.
it assume
sorry.
increases in health insurance
It does.
also?
8% is what we're projecting.
Okay.
We did do better than that this year, but again, we don't know what next year is going to hold. We have to wait till we get our experience study. So when we're doing these forecasts, we always try to be conservative in our estimates until we get better data.
Your last question.
Mr. Anthony?
Yeah. Does this contract, what if, say, 2019-20, the state legislators decide that they're going to roll us back to 6%? What would happen? Is this contract going to bind us so we have to pay that and then cut other programs? Or?
I think I would defer to the attorneys about the legal bindingness of the contract, but certainly if that were to happen, that revenue number I showed, you're talking about fiscal year 19, so we're projecting revenues of $1,079,393,000 at the rollback rate as it's currently defined, which is an 8% cap. If the legislature were to say we're going to cap you at 6% or 5% or 4%, those revenues would come down significantly, and we wouldn't be projecting a $7.9 million, I don't want to call it a surplus, but revenues in excess of expenditures. We wouldn't be projecting that any longer. And it would really be a fiscal year 20, I believe, because the legislature's out of session.
2021?
Yeah.
Councilmember Alter.
I wanted to confirm that this is at the 8% rollback rate.
All the revenue numbers
With
up
no
here
additions to the senior homestead.
Right.
Okay.
No additions to the general homestead exemption either.
Okay. I don't know if you want to do the next slide first, but
I'd
at
love
some
to.
point I would love for you to also do the specialty pay, the second page of the question 53, and I have copies of that if you don't have a slide
Yeah,
for it.
I think we have. We actually have the budget question 53. We could pull up on the screen.
You can do it
as
either
well.
before or after.
Let me
other
talk
part.
while he gets. Well, we would have to.
Yeah, let's
I need
do
the
the,
screen
do,
right
the,
now.
do the next slide because it answers the question that Councilmember Troxler asked
So-
about officers.
The other question was about the matrix study and the 144 officers called for in the matrix study. And if we were to do this contract within our financial forecast projections, can we afford the contract and the matrix study? So the first box looks at one of the requests we received from a council office is what if we wanted to do the matrix study in pretty much a linear fashion, 29 positions a year for 4 years, 28 positions in the 5th year. That gets you to 144. And what that shows is, you see in the first year, we're projecting that we really can't afford to add 29 officers in the first year. If we approved this contract under our current budget projections, if we put all the excess revenue towards officers, we wouldn't be able to afford the 28 additional officers. We'd have a $1.37 million deficit. So that's why we looked at in the green version, we're saying, well, what would be a phase-in plan where we could do the matrix study? And you can see at the bottom there, we're projecting that we could add, again, under the terms of this contract, if it were approved, we could afford to add 20 officers in 18, 28 more officers in 19, and then 32 a year for the final 3 years. That equates to 144 positions. But again, you would be at the rollback rate in fiscal year 18, or a little bit short of the rollback rate in fiscal year 18, but you'd be able to afford 20. In fiscal year 19, you'd be at the rollback rate, and you'd be able to afford 28, but nothing else. In fiscal year 20, we're projecting you'd be able to add those 32, and at the rollback rate, you'd have about $2.6 million for other initiatives, and then you can see how the numbers play out. By fiscal year 21, you would add 32 positions, and at the rollback rate, about $8.5 million for other initiatives. And then fiscal year 22, just because of the escalating cumulative nature of the rollback rate, in fiscal year 22, you could fund the 32 positions, you could fund the contract, and have about $16.9 million left for other initiatives. So even under the terms of the contract and wanting to add officers, we would project over the next 5 years, again, with a lot of assumptions that our sales tax trends are going to continue, that the state won't bring down the rollback rate, we would be able to afford the contracts and the additional officers and have some funding left for other initiatives, again, at the rollback rate, which I know is not always, that's not where we necessarily want to be.
Okay, before he moves on to the next slide, is there any questions with this? Councilmember Truxton.
So the 20 new officers in the green, does that include the 12 positions that we created but haven't funded yet?
It does not.
So it's really like 8 new positions, 8 new officers, I guess. Does this, I don't know.
Is it 20 new ones or 8 new ones?
It's, I think, it's 20 new funded positions, but there's 12 positions that currently aren't in the funded. So I think Councilmember was netting the 20 new funded positions against the 12 that Council added but never funded 2 budgets ago.
And Ed, this is the chart that does this say the same? I'm sorry, can you come look at this? And you can put it up if you need to. Does this say?
I have that chart.
Does that say? Can you put that up? I don't know if this is saying the same thing, but just in a different way. Okay.
So I think that's the chart you had
Yeah.
up there on the screen now?
Yeah.
So this was a request we had from your office to look at what would be the cost of adding 144 officers over 5 years on that phase-in scale. And so those numbers there are what we're building into the numbers in that top slide showing 29 officers a year for the first 4 years and 28 in the 5th year. Those numbers are what we're building into the yellow version of this scenario here. Those additional officer costs are what we build into here.
So the additional cost, so if we're going to do 144 new officers over 5 years, the total cost is $61 million in the red?
The cumulative cost for those 5 years. So some people like to look at it different ways, but for the cumulative cost for 5 years would be $61.4 million. The annual incremental cost would be the $18.7 million, plus another roughly $8 million for equipment.
Sorry, will you say that again? $18 million.
By the time you get to fiscal year 22, your annual budget would be $18.7 million more. Every year you'd be spending $18.7 million more for 144 officers. But if you want to then accumulate the cost of the 5 years, it's the $61 million.
So does the $18.7 million, that doesn't include the $80 million. That's just for the new officers. That doesn't include the $80 million that we're talking about in this contract for the existing officers.
That's right.
So does it make sense financially to add those two together? And like, what would it be annually?
I think it does. If you wanted to say, and Chris,
million?
check me if I'm wrong, but I think that absolutely does make sense. That if we wanted to say what we're doing in regards to APA is doing this contract that cost us $80 million plus adding 144 positions on that schedule over 5 years, that would cost you another $61 million. It would be a total of $141 million investment over 5 years to get the officers and the contract.
So, and then if you divide the $80 million over the 5 year total and add it to the 18.7 that you just talked about, we're talking about like $35 million a year.
not quite, because it doesn't quite work like that, where you just divide by 5. But I could get you that number, what the incremental annual increase in the budget would be if you add them all together.
Well, I just have. I mean, I feel for me this question of how much I feel like public safety is really important to my district. I mean, we have a lot of support for police officers, and I know that my district is going to want to see us continue to keep up with our growth by hiring new officers. So this question of whether or not we have enough money in this whether or not we're going to have enough money in future years to hire officers to keep up with our growth is really critical to me. So I just want to understand. And I don't know, it seems, considering that we are already at the rollback tax rate, we're already increasing property taxes 8% year over year. I don't see how we're going to come up. I don't understand how the numbers work for us to come up with what it looks to me like $35 million additional every year over the next 5 years. So every year.
It'll be more than $35 million, but I mean, we'll get you that number.
It'll be more than that.
You can't
every
just divide
year.
the 80 by 5 and then add it doesn't quite work like that, but yeah, it'd be the annual incremental increases would be more than that by the time you get to the 5th year.
Can you tell me, I guess, can you do the math and tell me what that is for the 144 officers, which I think is the matrix report recommendation, and then the next
For the 144,
box.
that's right.
The next box is the 329 new officers, which is the number that the department.
That was a presentation from the police department to the Public Safety Commission that expressed a need for 329 positions. So can you give me the same numbers for those positions as well? I mean, I'm guessing it's going to be more than twice as much. That's up there. That 329 positions over 5 years would be. And by the time you get to the 5th year, by the time you have all 329 of those positions on board, it would be $43.2 million annually of operating expense. 43.2. Oh, okay, I see that in number 2. Plus another 18 million, roughly 17.9 million for all the vehicles and the equipment that it takes to equip an officer. So 43 plus 17. The 17 is one time. It's not a recurring expense. It's the cost for the equipment, and the 43.2 million is an ongoing cost of the personnel. And plus the $80 million that we're talking about for the current contract. Yeah. So it's 40. So $43 million per year. 17 is 1 year expense. Is one-time expense. Yes. So I can divide 17 by 5, and that's 3.4. So 43 plus 3.4 is 46. And then can I divide 80 by 5 and add that as well? No, I mean, it's kind of hard to, you can't really see it unless you see it, and I don't have the slide to put up, but if you looked at if you were to look at the cost of the 5-year contract, going back to the contract, over 5 years, because in the first year of the contract, there's only a handful of provisions, so it doesn't cost you that much. Now, there's more provisions in the second year of the contract, plus those first year provisions carry forward. So the cumulative costs are the $80 million when you do that math. The other question is when you get to the 5th year of the contract and all those provisions are in place and they're all ongoing, what's the cost to you? And that's about $30.9 million annually. So by the time you get to the 5th year of the contract, your budget related to personnel costs for police would be, $31 million higher than it is currently. For 144 officers, or for? No, it's for the contract. For the contract. For the contract. Okay. The annual cost of the contract in year 5 would be $31 million. You could add that to the $43 million. So if you want to do this contract, plus you want to add 329 officers, by the time you get to year 5, your budget's going to be $74 million higher than it is currently. Every year? Every year. Yeah. 73, 75? What did you just say? 74. 74. So help me understand. This is a genuine conundrum for me. Help me understand how we can possibly afford $74 million every year. Under our forecast, you would not be able to afford this contract the other things that are going on in the general fund. I don't want to put it all on this contract, right? It's this contract, it's the fire contract, it's what we're assuming pay increases for civilians will be. All of those things, health insurance increases, which affect all of our employees, civil service or non-civil service, all of those things in our budget. You can't afford 329 officers and all those other things, even at the rollback rate, and even if we didn't add money for anything else.
So,
but
and
we
what's
are
that
projecting
number?
that you could fit in 144 with some money left over for other things.
So the number for the 329 officers is $74 million a year. So the number for the 144 officers should be 18 million plus 30 million, so 48 million per year.
18 million plus what?
Oh,
31 should be it should be 41 million or 49 million a year.
49 million. Okay.
50.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, we had our budget discussions this year mainly focused on $5 million that we had flexibility, some kind of flexibility to play with, and I don't. So when I'm thinking about $5 million was a struggle for this council to come up with and to spend and allocate appropriately. $49 million is just it's not. It doesn't make sense to me right now. But I will continue to listen to the conversation.
I think we're going to come back to your question. Are we still on this slide?
Ms. Kitchen?
Yes. No, I think you can go back to the previous slide. Yes. So the green, the green at the bottom. I think what we've just been discussing with Councilmember Troxclair was taking that projection for 329 officers. So I would like to see this analysis done for 329 officers. But I'm understanding from our conversation that what you're telling us and from the discussion we just had is that basically we cannot afford 329 officers. Okay.
Oops.
So, oops.
We can
Okay.
put that back
Well,
there.
then my rough back of the napkin kind of consideration of that is, with the slide you just had up, it looked like we only had $28.3 million to work with over the 5 years, even if we even had that much. And we're now talking about we need $79.3 million to carry the 329. So basically, there's a huge difference between what this shows us in the green and getting anywhere near the 329. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I mean, if we added a different color segment for 329 positions, you would be negative. We couldn't afford it.
Okay.
For sure.
Well, that really concerns me, and particularly since our police department let us know last summer when we were trying to anticipate what our needs were for a growing city. That's where the 329 number came from. Whether it's 200, 250, 300, 329, or maybe more, my concern is we are seriously, seriously constrained with these numbers by our ability for our department to grow. So, thank you.
Councilmember Alter, did you have a question about this, or you want to go on now to the next section?
Yes.
Any more questions about this?
Were those all his slides? I didn't understand.
Those were his slides now with respect to new officers, and now he's going to continue with the other questions he answered in his memo.
I'll ask my question at the end in case it gets answered.
Okay.
So let's see. I think what we have ready to put up is a response to a budget question we received last budget cycle. It's budget question number 53, which just includes a little bit more information about provisions of the contract. Chris? Is this it, or I thought you had 53 ready to go?
And I just passed out it's not going to be exactly the same as your chart, but the budget question that came up.
Yeah, that's what I thought we were going to get put up.
Do you want this?
No, so I think this is, let's see if this mouse is still, let me scroll here. Yeah, so this is the response to budget question 53. I don't know if you wanted me to go through all of it or if there's a specific part you want. It's
I wanted to particularly look at the specialty
this-
pay
okay.
because
Yep.
part of what we talked about in the
Yep.
presentation of the contract were the things that were changed.
Yep.
But in my mind, we are making a decision on the full contract, not just the things that changed, and the financial implications come from everything. And it's important that the public understand all of the pieces, and my colleagues as well.
Yes. So these are all the different specialty pays. None of these amounts, to my knowledge, are changing. The only thing I would caveat is that the current cost projections were for last fiscal year. And so you'll notice right off that some of these dollar amounts are a little bit different than the slide I showed you recently, which would be for the current fiscal year. But the actual dollar amounts of all these various specialty pays in that third column are not changing.
And
I
these
think
are okay.
we could go through these. I probably would look to some of our police personnel to help me talk about them because they're going to know better than I do what some of these certification pays are for and exactly how they work. You know, there's a range on some of them, again, just depending upon which certifications you have or which degree you have.
So correct me if I'm wrong in understanding it. They get longevity pay, so they get $107 per year of service, a max of 25 years.
That's right. So
and that's on top of their steps.
Right. So what we're showing there in that annual amount is if you had 1 year of service, you'd get $107, and if you had 25 years of service, you'd get $2,675 of longevity pay on top of your base pay on top of steps.
Okay, and then we have some stipends for things that we want to incentivize or reward: the field training officers, the mental health certification, bilingual education incentives, some kind of certificate. Then they also get a clothing allowance.
That's only for detectives, I believe. The sworn officers have a uniform provided to them, but detectives get a clothing allowance.
Okay. Thank you. And then there's a shift and differential amount. They no longer, with this contract, would be getting the overtime paid as productive time.
That's right. Yep, that's taken out, that
Is
$500,000.
court time paid at overtime rate still?
Yes, I believe court time is a minimum of 4 hours. If it's more than 4 hours, you get paid more than 4 hours, but it's a minimum of 4 hours of court time, overtime, for when you're called back for a court appearance.
And go ahead.
Could I ask? May I ask a question about that? With the court time, do you have to be in court for 4 hours, or is there a?
I believe if you're called into court and you're maybe only there for an hour and the case gets dismissed or something like that, you still get 4 hours. But I'd have to look to some of the personnel behind me to help.
And is that time or time and a half?
That would be 4 hours of overtime pay at time and a half.
Even if you were only there for 45 minutes, or?
That is correct. It's a 4 hour. It's a 4 hour minimum. So if you're there for less than that, then you're paid at the 4 hour rate.
Okay. Thank you.
And then maybe, Chief, you could also explain the last one, callback paid at overtime rate.
Callback is when officers are on call. So a lot of our investigative divisions, whether it be homicide, robbery, sex crimes, we have to have a certain portion of that division that's actually on call and available to respond after hours, during the night, in the early morning hours, to be called back into work. So there's overtime paid to those officers because those are hours above and beyond their 40-hour assignment.
And then in the contract, you've added a patrol stipend.
That's what I talked about earlier, to incentivize officers to stay on patrol beyond 4 years, correct.
Okay, and then there was the hiring bonus would somehow be put into this, but the signing bonus to the contract of the $1,000.
I believe what that was, since the contract, if it's approved, would not go into effect, obviously, back on October 1. So it was to make the effective 1% raise try and reflect back to what that would have equated to had it gone into effect back on October 1st.
Okay, so that ratification bonus. So there's a lot of other things that come into play in terms of their pay besides the base wage. We have the step, we have the stipends. It's important that we keep that in mind as we're evaluating what this contract is doing. So thank you.
Chief, before you sit down.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm just really intrigued by this court time pay at the overtime rate. How much did we pay out last year and the year before for in that particular category?
I can get those numbers for you, but there's one other thing too, and I would give you the specifics of it, but I want to be certain on it. There's also connected time. If your court hearing is within 1 hour of getting off duty, then that's different than if you're called in on a day off, or if you're called in, say, 4 hours after going off duty. So I'll get you the specifics on that, and we'll pull the budget numbers for what our court overtime costs were in prior years.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, we ready to move on? Okay.
Mayor, I did have my one question left for Mr. Manino.
Okay, go ahead.
So your very first slide, the very beginning of this thing, just one question.
The very first slide with all the colors, the very first slide that showed the step increases.
Very first slide with the colors.
Okay.
With the 4 charts. Sorry, everybody. None of these charts would show us. You have the final line, which is what our budget would look like with fire, with police, and without EMS. But
with an assumption for EMS, but without
with an assumption for EMS. So you don't have a slide that shows for us yes vote or no vote today what the revenue would be, right? You don't have that calculated out right now. So, for example, I think you said in year 5 it would be $31 million more, so it would be something like 37 plus 31 would be the amount of revenue.
Right.
Is that
no?
fair?
I don't have something. If you don't approve this contract, we would have to think about how we would want to forecast that. I mean, it depends. Are we going to stick with if you don't approve this contract, are we sticking with the provisions of the soon-to-be expired contract? Are we going back to civil service? You get very, very different answers without some parameters around how we would do those projections without a contract.
Understood. I just wanted to figure out what the comparison was. But what you're saying is in year 5, the incremental cost is about $31 million.
Of this contract.
Of this contract. So is it really bad math to say, okay, if there wasn't a contract, that $37 million would go up to 68?
I think it would be fair to say if you kept all the provisions of the existing soon-to-be expired contract, the steps, the specialty pays, and all those things, you kept all that. You simply offered no base wage increases, no to the patrol stipend, no to those other new pay items. Then what the math you just did would be, I think that would be right. If we went to civil service, if we go all the way back to civil service, the number would be much larger.
Sorry, say that part one more time.
What were the numbers too?
So it's $37 million at the rollback rate. We would be projecting there would be $37 million to fund other initiatives, new officers, whatever council wanted to do under this contract. Council member was asking, well, if we didn't do any of the base wage increases, we didn't do the patrol stipend, we didn't do any of the other new provisions in this contract, it would be, instead of $37 million, it would be $68 million. Actually need to back that down by $7.5 million, depending what your answer is to the step system. If we were to maintain the current step system, you'd have to back that number down by about $7.5 million.
So obviously that number is escalating across the 5 years as well, just because the contract escalates across the 5 years. Thank you.
So that I understand that number, if we didn't do that, you're looking in the 37. That's the year 5 number. So that was the annual number at that point. I'm trying to figure out it was a 7.3 annual number right there, right in the 5th year.
The $37.275 million.
The $80 million that you said was the incremental cost for this contract.
The cumulative cost.
Cumulative cost. In the 5th year, it was $7.3 million.
In the 5th year, it's actually $31 million. I think if you're don't have exactly what you're looking at, but I'm guessing the $7.3 million is an increase from fiscal year 2021 to 2022.
Correct.
So that's just the increase. That's the 1 year increase. That's the cost of the 5th year of the contract. You'd have to have another $7.3 million, but all the other cost increases before that have to come along too.
Right, so the cumulative cost, the $23.4 million number.
$23.4 million for the new pay provisions and about $7.5 million for the step system. That's why I was saying
All right.
$31 million
Got it.
total, but if you want to keep the
Got
step
it.
system, it'd only be $23 million.
All right, thank you. Let's go get the speakers. Okay, we have personal emergency situation I'm going to deal with here. So I'm going to call right now David Knutson. Is David here? Why don't you come and speak? The next speaker will be Chris Harris, and after that it'll be Andre Porter. Sir, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been in law enforcement for over 35 years. I'm retired military, retired Air Force senior NCO. I've spent all of my time in law enforcement, and I've seen both how things are without a contract and with a contract. The Austin Police Department, everybody I've worked with, I've always seen stellar work from everybody, and I think that the contract that is in place, if it's voted down, then the ramification would probably be quite a bit worse. I don't see any reason that that this shouldn't be looked on favorably. I've seen a lot of people held accountable. When I go to work every day, if I do something wrong and I should be held accountable, no problem. If I do something wrong, I'll bite the bullet for it. I think everybody goes to work feeling the same way. You go to work, you do the right thing. You do whatever you can to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Andre Porter. I'm sorry. You are our next speaker, Chris. Thank you. And you'll have a total of five minutes. Kareth Clark. Okay, thank you. And Kate Graziani. Kate, are you in?
She's right out there.
Okay, very good. Then you'll have a total of 5 minutes. You'll be followed by Andre Porter. Andre, if you'd like to come up and prepare yourself at that podium.
Thank you. My name is Chris Harris. I'm from District 1, and I'm urging you to vote no against the contract. Probably one of the few people as a data person in the room that appreciated all those spreadsheets, at least back here just now. The one question I'd have is I wonder if they're accounting for the inevitable millions this city will spend in police brutality lawsuits over the course of the next contract. And I say that really to kind of make it plain that we have an issue. You know, the talk about best practices you heard from DeRay and Sam and Ranjana, that's not just academic. According to Campaign Zero, we have the #1 police murder rate of all big cities in Texas since 2013. When you look at the FBI UCR non-negligent homicide data from 2013 to 2016, 13% of murders committed in Austin over that time period were by the police. The Center for Policing Equity, along with the Urban Institute, came out with a study last year that showed that for every 1% increase in black population in a neighborhood in Austin, you had a 2.6% increase in use of force. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but what that means is that the difference between less than 5% black neighborhoods in West Austin and upwards of 60% black neighborhoods in East Austin is 140% more use of force incidences. And what we hear from the police chief is, trust me. He says that, you know, with the tools in place and the current proposed deal, you can trust him. He'll deal with accountability. Then the question was asked, okay, what about the promotional bypass? They say, city negotiators say, we don't need to deal with that in the contract. The chief has the ability now as policy to bypass people for promotions based on previous conduct. But then when asked tonight about whether or not he would use that under 143 if there was no contract, he said, well, if people are passing the test and they're not getting promoted, it might hurt morale. How are we supposed to trust that? And again, in a city where we've got serious use of force and police brutality incidents. And I think that it's really important that we understand. We've heard some of the really heart-wrenching personal stories. I thank David Joseph's brother, Mark, and his mom for coming. And the stories about Morgan Rankins. I mean, obviously, the names can go on and on. Jason Roque from earlier this year, Nathaniel Sanders, Kevin Brown, Larry Jackson Jr., we have to have something different in place in this town. The time is now. This is only once every 5 years. If we don't do it now, many of you won't have another opportunity. So this is your chance, and I really implore you to take it. I want to end with another number, which is 1. I've counted exactly one person who's spoken in favor of this contract tonight who was not in law enforcement. On the other side of this, you've heard from an amazing cross-section of this community, representing not just criminal justice advocates, but people that work in public health, in mental health, in academia, in legal, in civil society, in environmental issues, all coming to you with one clear message, which is we must vote down this contract, and we must begin to rethink public safety in this town in a new way. And you have an opportunity to do that tonight. And so, again, I implore you all to take that opportunity to seize this moment. It's a moment that's not just local but national as well. And to seize this moment and to vote no on this contract. And I believe in you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Next up is Andre Porter. Andre Porter. All right. Pedro Loverio. Pedro Loverio. How about Scott Gunter? Welcome, Mr. Gunter. You have 3 minutes. You will be followed by Najera Reith.
Thank you. Good evening, and on behalf of my
Keith,
family, myself, and the police department, my fellow officers, I just want to ask you to vote yes for the contract. I'm a 4-year officer in a prior department. I've been here 2 years. I spent 4 years in St. Louis, actually, as a police officer there. I was a newly appointed detective when I got sick of working all the overtime, basically, and not being home as much as I could. I basically started out from scratch doing research of where I'd want to go. I knew that I was marketable with some education and different things, so I didn't feel like it'd be too hard to get on anywhere. But I wanted to go where I might live in a community where I could be compensated as best as possible, work hard for the community that I'm living in, and serve them. I came across, obviously, the Austin Police Department and the relationship that the association has with the city to build the package that they have to say, you know, this is a great place to be a police officer. It's a great place to serve the community. And so I came here. And, you know, they said it in St. Louis, but here I believe it, that we are one of the best, if not the best, police department in the United States. And that the standard here, as they advised me, the recruiting even told me, you know, you're probably going to lose some days. Just be ready for them. You know, the standard here is high, set by you as the city authorities, as the community has already expressed. They have a high standard, and the standard here is high, and rightfully so, for integrity, transparency, and accountability as well. And as we all have mentioned, we're well paid, and I think all those things go together because basically we want to recruit the best to be here and to serve all of us in this room and all the people out here. And we want the people that are here and doing a great job, we want them to stay, of course. And I think this package, the last contract and this one, continues to do those same things. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Najera Keith. Jairus Kelly. Is Jairus Kelly here? Yes. And how about Lauren Reed? Is Lauren Reed here? Okay, welcome, Ms. Keith. You will have 4 minutes, and you'll be followed by Robin Rather if she's here.
Good evening. My name is Injera Keith. I'm the founder of Black Sovereign Nation. I'm not going to leave this podium until I'm finished speaking. I refuse to observe rules that marginalize the community for whom this process is supposed to be. All of the people who came to speak on behalf of Austin Police Department are already overrepresented during the negotiation process. The community is finally able to represent itself, and you want those who never get to speak to sum up their concerns in 1 to 3 minutes? No. Also, council should know this, but for those in this room who don't, nowhere near 7 reforms were included in this contract, though none of us are surprised that APD is spouting lies. They do much worse in our neighborhoods every day. An officer came up here and said he serves the community. Which one? Because you guys are destroying mine. I wonder if this council knows how traumatizing it is for Black and brown folks to come down here over and over to beg for their lives. The people who came here tonight are demanding that you acknowledge your constituents and eliminate a negotiation process that does not include them. We are not comfortable with the City of Austin and the Austin Police Association sitting at a table and casually discussing what for us are matters of life and death. The City of Austin cannot represent David Joseph without David Joseph's family. The City of Austin cannot represent Morgan Rankins without Morgan's community. The City of Austin cannot represent Breon King without allowing Breon to weigh in. You cannot represent Lawrence Parrish without his brother Clurin. I have said their names before, and I'll say them every time because their lives mattered, and they still do. Just this morning, BSN was contacted by people who witnessed Austin Police Department arresting a young man whose name I will not utter in present company for fear that he'll be further harassed and assaulted. APD was caught on video escorting the young man out of a store after arresting him for a minor offense. The police officers are then seen on camera walking the young man around to the back of the store where they proceeded to beat him. This happened yesterday on December 12th, 2017, but the scene looked eerily similar to 1991 Los Angeles, where Rodney King was tased and beaten mercilessly. Do you want your legacy to be the endorsement of that kind of violence, that kind of brutality? Is that what you all want to be remembered for? Did you run for office to continue utilizing a process that is deaf to the voices of the community? A process that has been inequitable and corrupt since the beginning, when the then union chief was included in the original police oversight focus group. This is crazy. A process that continues to reward murder with bonuses and wage increases. Do you want to be known for allowing APA to bully you into preserving a process that completely ignores our communities and benefits only Austin Police Department? Because that's not what you claim to want. Mayor Adler, in reference to reinstating free bus fare for seniors and the disabled, insisted that the government could be lean without being mean. I mean, in terms of funding the things that actually matter, you all sure are lean. You refuse to allocate $350,000 to more shelter beds for the homeless. APD's budget is obese, though. Public safety gets 68% of the total city budget, and APD gets 40% of that. It's ridiculous.
Ms. Keith?
I'm going to keep talking.
You are at your time, but I bet we have some people who
this
donate.
This community gets 1 minute. You guys had this whole presentation that could have happened. We could have had a totally different session, right? Where the community could have
Ms.
heard
Keith,
all of that.
Let me get, I think you have a lot of people who'd like to donate time.
No, I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep talking.
If you would, those of you who have your hand up, if you'd go give the clerk your
Councilwoman
names,
Houston, in
and we'll add your
2014,
time.
when you ran against Dwayne Lofton for this seat, you said that your history in the struggle against segregation would help you serve District 1. You said that you believed building relationships was key. What is your relationship to the community now? And what do you wish for your relationship to be? Do you want to be someone who is here for your constituents, or someone who ignores their concerns? Let's talk about our relationship.
Ms. Keith, let me pause you for 1 minute.
Councilmember Tovo,
That's
during
me,
your campaign,
and I'm happy to hear it,
you
but
said
if you
that
would
people
pause for
of
1
all
minute.
income levels deserve to live and thrive in Austin.
Okay.
What say you now that the poorest of us, who just so happen to be the blackest and brownest of us, are deprived
Ms.
of this
Keith.
right? Will you
Ms.
make a
Keith.
decision that reflects your proclaimed values and eliminate a process that refuses to acknowledge the needs of the very people you referenced? I won't speak for every group here, though I know many of them share our sentiments. But BSN is committed to mobilizing the communities we represent against APA, APD, and this council if you do not make the right decision. Remember that we are the people, and we have the power, and we're not going anywhere.
Thank you, Ms. Keith.
Thank you,
Ms.
Councilmember
Rather,
Tovo.
you have 3 minutes, and you'll be followed by Scott Henson.
I just want to take a second and acknowledge how powerful that particular speaker was, and she has my greatest respect. But at the same time, I'm going to come at this a little bit differently. I do want to say this is a historic night, and I'm excited about it. This might be the most important night. I've been down here a lot on environmental issues, but this may be the most important night, the most historic night, because not only do we have one of the most diverse and expert set of activists in the chambers tonight, in my opinion, and I say this from the heart, we also have the finest police department, and in particular, Chief, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you. I trust you. And I also trust the activists in this House. And what I'm asking for, and what I think we're capable of, and what I think the national context demands of us, is for us to work together. We are not that far apart. I don't think anybody actually disagrees that every single one of these justice reforms is completely legitimate, completely necessary, and completely doable, and soon. Those reforms are needed. They're needed in our town. At the same time, our police force, in my opinion, is worth every dime we can spend on them. It's hypocritical, as people who have worked for a livable wage, for people that have worked on affordability, to say, oh, we're paying them too much. They are us. APD is us. We have systemic racism in our community. They have systemic racism. They know it. They're working on it. They need us, all of us, to work with them. What I'm asking for is that we put our A game on the table. We get these justice reforms done. We get these guys paid. I want to say how much I appreciate your sitting there, those of you from APD, when I know you lost one of your own. Just today you buried a fellow officer from San Marcos. It wasn't that long ago that we all buried Officer Padron. And I want to say we deserve the best and not a false trade-off. We should not disrespect our police officers, and we certainly shouldn't disrespect any members of our community. In Austin, we're capable of all of that. We're capable of all of it. And I implore you, I know a lot of you council members personally, and I know where your hearts are, and I know you don't want to have to choose between a fantastic, safe, incredible police department and a safe, just community that's working together with this kind of diversity and this kind of power. So I ask you, whatever you do, and by the way, I don't understand where this notion came that, oh, we should throw out what we have and trust something from the state of Texas. I'm never going to trust the state of Texas with our civil rights with anything that's important to us, we should trust ourselves. We can do this. We can close the gap that there is between us, and we should do it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rather. Scott Henson, just 1 minute. Is Lisa Brown here? How about Michael Gorenko? Okay, Mr. Henson, you have 5 minutes, and you'll be followed by Robert Barger.
All right, then. Well, I may not need the whole 5, but anyway, my name is Scott Henson. I appreciate y'all staying here late tonight to hear everybody speak. This is an historic and very important night, and I think it's very important that you do pay close attention and take all this seriously. I know sometimes some of this can get pretty hot, but it's hot because it's important, and it's hot because it matters, and that's why everyone's up here, and I appreciate y'all taking it seriously. I wanted to give just a little bit of backstory and history about how we got here, because not everybody has been here through this entire process, a few on the police side, but really even on the advocacy side. It was said by Chief Manley and others, oh, well, if we don't sign this contract, we're going to lose all this great accountability and oversight that we've negotiated over all these years. And the history I wanted to give you is about how that oversight originally got here. I was part of a group of people back in the 90s that launched a campaign to try and install civilian oversight here in Austin. And we worked for a couple of years to get created something called the Police Oversight Focus Group that was created, and we negotiated in good faith. The union was involved. The community was involved. They came up with a plan. It was a compromise. We didn't get everything we wanted, but it was a plan. Then they went into the union negotiations, and at the time, we were not allowed there. Austin Justice Coalition has been in the room this time. That's been incredibly important. That's been a huge accountability element, frankly, in all this, and it's allowed the community to sit at the table. We weren't allowed at the table back then, and so they went in behind closed doors, and they came back with the version of the Austin Police Monitor that we have now, which is a piece of junk. That's the problem. And when we came back in the day, this was in 2000, the community, we had a hearing very much like this. About 150 people signed up to speak against the police contract. All the people that have been pushing for civilian oversight for years showed up that night to oppose the police contract, just like they are opposing the police contract tonight, because the oversight is a piece of junk. It's not worth anything. It's not doing anything. It's not helping anyone. They make recommendation after recommendation, and nothing happens ever. Ever. And we knew that would be the case. It was structurally gutted like a fish when they put the thing in place in the first place. We knew it. That's why we opposed it in the first place. That's why we didn't want this. We said it's better not to have a contract at all than to have what we're having here, because what you're doing is providing cover for misbehavior. You're letting the public think, oh, well, we have civilian oversight. We're holding our police accountable. No, you're not. It's a lie. It's not true. It's not true. So that's the problem we had then. We have the same problem today, and we've forgotten our history. We've forgotten that nobody wanted this thing in the first place. The union wanted the money. The city had political reasons that they wanted it. It wasn't about, oversight then, and it needs to become about oversight now. Real quickly, since I have a little time, I'm going to mention that the other thing that first contract did is it made the Austin police officers at that time, when you adjusted for the relative cost of living where you are, the highest paid officers in the country. Today, they're still the highest paid officers in Texas. And what that did was squeeze out for that entire intervening 17-year period every other priority that the city had. Bill Spellman complained about it for years and years, that the police budget is squeezing out all our priorities. There are a lot of other ways that your budget can promote public safety. You can provide programs that help victims. You can hire case managers. You can do all sorts of training. You can have homeless housing. There's a lot of things we can do if you have some extra money that will influence public safety more than just hiring a few more people with a gun. And we need to look at those things. One last thing, and then I'll let one last thing, then I'll be done. It was mentioned earlier that, and it is true, that they didn't get seven of the 8 reforms in the contract. I think they got 1. But it was also mentioned that it was said that the open records proposal by the advocates was somehow illegal, that we can't modify the Open Records Act. I don't use this word lightly at all, but I will tell you that is a flat out lie. That is simply not true. The fact is that hold on, please, let me just finish. So the fact is that on the open records, here's what's going on. In Chapter 143, 089G, this is the 143 that they can negotiate within. Chapter 143, 089G creates a secret personnel file that the city may create. If the city creates the secret personnel file, all the disciplinary records go into that file. You can negotiate that, you should negotiate that, and you should not accept a contract that does not include transparency for police misconduct. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henson. Robert Barger is next, and you'll be followed by Deborah Alemu.
And I should have some donated time as well.
Let's see. Is Stacy Barger here? How about Todd Harrison? Okay, sir, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Robert Barger, and I wanted to say good evening to the council and to the mayor, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you guys today. I'm an Austin police officer, and so is my brother. We both grew up here in Austin, attended Woolridge Elementary, Webb 6th Grade Center, Burnett Junior High, and Lanier High School right here in Austin. We've been a part of this city for a long time and both serve as Austin police officers. My brother and I have been in an unfortunate situation to have been involved in critical incidences in the course of our duties as police officers, where we were placed in imminent danger of losing our life when responding to a call for help via 911 from a citizen. He in 2007 and I in 2013. In 2007, my brother responded to a disturbance and was shot at by a man with a shotgun loaded with slugs, which narrowly missed hitting him. The suspect had just told his brother that he was going to go to the University of Texas and make what happened at Virginia Tech look like a walk in the park. My brother's heroic actions that day were key in preventing a mass shooting in our city, in my hometown, in our hometown. In 2013, just 2 years after I started as a police officer, I faced a gunman who had shot his handgun and then pointed it at his neighbor and then at police officers when responding. Ultimately, the gunman was apprehended and taken into custody without injury. He had a stockpile of weapons and ammunition in his residence, and our work that day made Austin a safer place to be. We work diligently every day to provide for the safety and security of the citizens of Austin, and I plan to continue to do so. However, I would ask you to consider every officer who has faced the uncertainty of being face-to-face with a gunman and wondering if they are going to make it home to their family. And ask yourself, is this city getting what it's paid for? I believe the city is getting what it's paid for. The Austin Police Department is recognized as the finest police department in the state of Texas and arguably one of the best in the nation. I would say that the investment that the city has made has been returned in kind and the city has received what they've paid for. In closing, Local Government Code Chapter 143 is the basis of how civil service works. Meet and confer collective bargaining agreements are required in order for a city to make modifications to 143, such as customizing a hiring or disciplinary process. Without a meet and confer agreement, the city just goes back to Chapter 143. There is no innovation found in going back to Chapter 143. The city would be restricted by the confines of the chapter, period. All the ways the city has customized its ability to manage personnel at the Austin Police Department are done through negotiation. None of the things the city or activists may be wanting to change are found in Chapter 143, which is why the city has been doing meet and confer and collective bargaining since the 1990s. Let's not gamble with the safety of the citizens of our community by rolling the dice here today. Let's stay with what has made Austin one of the safest cities in the United States. And let's not gamble with the probability that the legacy of this council could be that it started the decline of public safety in Austin. Thank you.
Okay, is Kirsten Johansson here? And how about Annalise Cornely? Annalise Cornely? Okay, you have 4 minutes. And you'll be followed. I'll get back to you on that.
Good evening, council members. My name is Deborah. I live in District 1, and I'm a member of Black Sovereign Nation. I wish that community members Sophia King, Daniel Rocha, Larry Jackson Jr., Richard Monroe, David Joseph, Micah Jester, and Morgan Rankins were here to enumerate their pain, to talk about how they were harmed by Austin Police Department, but they're not. So I wanted to uplift their voices again, and I also want to ask that council votes no on this contract and to do away with meet and confer process. Tonight we've seen lots of shirts that say keep Austin safe, and as an Austinite, safety means the freedom to move about my life without fear of injury, detainment, or death. I don't associate safety with having to worry whether or not every time I'm pulled over, I could be shot and killed and unfairly detained. If the council wants to make Austinites feel safe, then give the health department more than 3% of the funds in the proposed bond, fund navigation centers to connect homeless people with services, fund Del Valle Youth Workforce Programming, fund temporary shelter beds for the homeless. The options continue on, and if you added all of these up, they still would not amount what the contract has listed in front of us. For decades, elected officials have stripped funds from mental health services, housing subsidies, youth programs, food benefit programs, while pouring money into police forces, military-grade weapons, high-tech surveillance, jails, and prisons. These investment choices have not made us safer and have devastated Black and brown low-income communities. Austin needs to invest in our communities and divest from the punitive systems that have historically existed to terrorize and murder our people, my people. Austin police have murdered countless members of the local community, and I want to encourage that council does not use their hands to help APD continue squeezing the trigger. There is abundant evidence that the 1997 meet and confer process, a process through which accountability, transparency, and civil oversight were supposed to permeate the toxic culture of brutality on the local police force. And instead of increased measures to ensure proper and appropriate police conduct, meet and confer has in fact continued to result in benefits for APD and millions of wasted taxpayer dollars. There's abundant evidence that police and jails do not make communities safe, and in many cases actually undermine safety. Yet at the local, state, and national levels, significant portions of public money are dedicated to policing and incarceration, while comparatively minuscule amounts are dedicated to the services, resources, and infrastructure we need to continue keeping our communities healthy and safe. So I strongly urge my council member, Ora Houston, and the other council members and the mayor to vote no on this contract and do away with this meet and confer process. There are other options, contrary to the officer prior to me said.
Thank you very much. Is Andre Porter here? Andre Porter? Okay, how about Pedro Laverio? Okay, our next speaker then, and we're moving now to the 1-minute speakers, is Lisa Fithian. You do, and I'm about to call on those. Will Trippett? Is Will Trippett here? Ms. Fithian, did you say he's still here?
He was here, but I don't know if he's still
Okay.
here.
How about Josefina Cienfuegos? Thank you. So you have 4 minutes. I'm sorry, 2 minutes.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Lisa Fithian. I'm from District 5. I had the opportunity to attend the Public Safety Commission meeting last Monday, the 4th, where they took a vote on this. And I have to say that I'm ashamed about what I saw in that room. Because not only did I see the president of the APA, Ken Cassidy, sort of bullying and threatening what was going to happen I saw the interim police chief sort of talk about all the great tweaks that were being made. And then the thing that was really the kicker, the convener of that board said, I'm on the civilian review board, and I can tell you it doesn't work. But I'm going to go for this contract anyway because I want to support collective bargaining rights. I walked out of there completely outraged. I've been a union organizer much of my life. I worked with labor, home builders, auto workers, janitors, hotel workers, hospital workers. And I have never seen the percentage of raises that are being 7%, 12%. I mean, where do you see those wage increases? Really? So the chief said earlier tonight that the system is working. But I would say that the system is working for the police. It is not working for the community. I kept having this idea of golden handcuffs. They're getting the gold and we're getting cuffed in this deal. I want to just bring your attention to this because this is $200,000 bills. This represents 1/8 of the money just for signing bonuses. If you were to put this stack to the 1.9 million, it would be a stack of bills this high, everyone, this many bills, $1,000 bills. How many of you here in the Keep Austin Safe are willing to turn this money back over? And I also wonder, the money for the shirts themselves, everything the police have comes from tax dollars. We want to keep Austin safe, but we have talked about safety in this context is overrated. We're talking about real safety. The community is giving you examples of what can be done here. And I urge you to vote no on this process. Let's create a new way in Austin. We know it's possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Do any of you need $200,000?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vivian. So since we're at the 1 minute, I think it would probably be a great idea if people could come up, a few names in advance. So I'll read out the next batch of names: Lauren Ross, Susan Cottom, Adam Kahn, and Elizabeth Moses. So if you would come up, and each of you will have 1 minute.
If you identify as undoing white supremacy, Austin, please come. Come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Lauren Ross, and Ann Kitchen, Councilmember Kitchen, is representing me tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of Undoing White Supremacy Austin, and members of our community are coming behind me. We organized 3 community forums on this issue in Councilmember Tovo, Councilmember Kitchen, and Councilmember Toole's district. As long as we hold that our problem is a few bad apples on the police force, we are not going to solve the problem of police violence. While we think that the solution lies in hiring the right cadets or making our police ranks multiracial enough, the young men and women of color will suffer violence and die at the hands of Austin police. Sorry, I have to take a minute just to look and see. That's really good. These are folks standing here to undo white supremacy in Austin. We fail to recognize that police violence against people of color is a systemic problem. Sorry, that can't be me. We refuse to see that it arises out of the same processes that produce inequity in school discipline.
Ms. Ross, I apologize, that is you. As with our previous speaker, if you need time donated,
I think there are some people that have donated their time already. Okay, thank you. We refuse to see that it arises out of the same processes that produce inequity in school discipline for kindergarten children, in high school and college graduation rates, in infant deaths, in life expectancy, in wealth, and in the services and zoning in the neighborhoods where we live. We deny that policing today continues a tradition that is rooted in the enforced enslavement of black bodies to produce wealth for others. When we acknowledge that history, when we as a community embrace and express our commitment to undo racism and make the necessary reparations, we won't have to bribe police. We will pay them fairly, and they will express our community values. When every system in Austin is organized around equity, justice, and compassion, our policing will reflect our commitment. There is no contract, No pay bonus, no retirement benefit with the capacity to achieve that goal. We must fund instead what is foundational to safety: schools, mental health care, housing, and affordability. This contract is too much money for too little accountability, and we ask that you vote no on the meet and confer contract. Thank you.
So I'll try to catch up as best I can. Susan Cotham, had you donated your time? Susan Cotham? I think may have. Adam Khan, you're up. You have 1 minute. Is Elizabeth Moses here? No? What about Kate Bedicare? You'll be up here. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. Adam Khan testifying against the proposed contract, and I love how you guys always give me the best acts to follow. This contract rips off taxpayers to protect bad cops. By itself, either one of those things should be a deal breaker. Why on earth do we want to do both? Now, I've been through enough budget cycles in this building at this point to know the numbers that we've heard repeated a lot of times tonight. 2/3 of the general fund goes to public safety, 40% goes to APD. And I also have been through enough budget cycles in this building to know that every single time we get into late August, early September, these long-term public safety contracts always come back to bite us in the backside. So people are talking about mental health. People are talking about any number of other things. I don't think it's a particular secret that I think this city government, led by this council, taxes too much. And if you want to lower the tax rate, this is where the money exists.
Great, thank
One
you.
other point I just want to say, this contract also doesn't do anything about pensions, and that is a gigantic concern that I would like to see addressed as well.
Thank you. Elizabeth Moses. Is Heather Busby here? Why don't you come on down? I think you have some time donated by Julie Gilberg. Ms. Gilberg here? Yeah, I'm here. There you are. So you'll have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Good evening,
1
Mayor
minute.
and Council. My name is Catherine Bedicray. I am a resident of District 9, and I am a doctoral candidate in the Department of African and African Diaspora Studies at UT. I've been coming to City Council meetings since the murder of David Joseph, but tonight's the first night that I'll be speaking with you. I just wanted to talk about my experience as a TA with freshman students for a course on mass incarceration, and we've been reading the latest scholarship on the criminal justice system, and these freshmen are outraged by the way in which vulnerable communities are targeted for surveillance, policing, arrest, corporal punishment, and detention. And they are shocked by the impunity granted to officers in Austin and across the country. So I'm here to say that graduate students and undergraduate students at UT are watching how the council votes this evening. And we want real transparency and oversight. And we urge you to vote against the contract. Thank you.
Is Jorge Renault here? Okay. And I think you have some time from Lindsay Davis. Is Davis here? Here. Is Miriam Connor here? Miriam Connor? No? You'll have 2 minutes. You'll be up next.
Clark. I think Carissa Clark also donated time.
Someone else is going to donate your time? Yeah. Would you come down to the clerk and give her your name, please? Go ahead. You had 2 minutes.
Okay. My name is Heather Busby. I am a member of District 7, and I'm here also in my capacity as the Executive Director of NARAL Pro-Choice Texas. Raising families in safe communities is a matter of reproductive justice, but that also includes Black and brown families. Raising children free from fear that they'll be shot by police is a matter of reproductive justice. Being able to call for help when you have a mental illness is a matter of reproductive justice. When the system is not working, the solution should address that, not slap a Band-Aid while costing so much in taxpayer money. I urge you to vote against this meet and confer contract and listen to the voices of the community that are here today. I think we've spoken pretty loud and clear that this contract is not supported by the community and the community deserves better. Thank you.
Is Bob Liable here? Bob, you'll be up next. And is Amanda Williams here? Amanda Williams? No? You'll have 1 minute.
We donated an additional for Jorge.
I'm sorry?
We just donated more time for Jorge.
Who did? If you go up to the clerk and give her your name. Okay? Go on up to the clerk. Sir, you have 3 minutes.
Council, Mayor, my name is Jorge Renault, Texas Advocates for Justice. From 2012 to 2015, I was a facilitator of community building circles done in a restorative justice manner at the Mission Possible Church at 12th Chigon. That was a direct result of something that APD and the District Attorney's Office had launched called the Drug Market Intervention Strategy. Part of that was, again, bringing together the community, faith members, and police officers, right, at the direct order of Art Acevedo and Fred Fletcher in an attempt to address some of the tensions that were rising within the community. That effort was given impetus in 2013 after Charles Kleinert, a white detective in the Austin Police Department, chased down and shot to death Larry Jackson Jr., a black individual who was fleeing unarmed and did not pose a threat to himself or to anyone else. I sat there and facilitated circles pretty well every week for almost 3 years, with anywhere from 1 to 4 police officers in the room. They would sit there and almost exclusively, they would contribute very little. They would sit there in their full regalia, in flak jackets, armed, and they would talk about how maligned they were, how misunderstood they were, and how they did not feel that they were members of the community, and that they never once chose to take off the symbols of oppression and violence that they brought into those circles. I think that until the police officers in Austin put the community first and their status police officers second, that any contract of this nature needs to be set aside. One other thing, I want to respond directly to the lieutenant who a minute ago who warned that Austin was going to inevitably descend into some sort of dystopia if she and her fellow officers did not get a raise, because that is what this is all about. In January of this year, there were 69 lieutenants in APD, and they had a median salary of $130,000. I don't know how many of the organizers or teachers or psychologists or any other members of the community who have come up here make $130,000 a year, but I do know that they contribute every bit as much to the safety that she extolled as being part of Austin as she says. So, all due respect to that lieutenant and to every other officer on this police force, but I do urge her that after tonight that she perhaps take the 80%, which is going to be $104,000 that she is guaranteed now as a pension, and that perhaps she leave keeping Austin safe to the community. Thank you.
So as I pointed out, we have still a couple hours worth of testimony. And I know everybody's into this. The applause in between will extend to probably about another half an hour, 40 minutes. All right, so the next speaker that we have is going to be Bethany Carson. Is Bethany Carson here? Why don't you come on down? Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. My name is Bob Leibel. I'm the Executive Director at Grassroots Leadership. I'm also a 15-year resident of District 7. So Councilmember Poole, I'm your constituent. So Grassroots Leadership was proud to be one of the now 20 organizations here in Austin, civil rights and community organizations, and more than 100 community leaders who have called on the city to reject this contract, noting that it does far too little to further accountability and transparency in the Austin Police Department. And let me be clear, The civil rights community that is represented here today views this issue as a litmus test. We heard this earlier from someone on this side of the room, but this is a litmus test issue for people in the civil rights community here. And we believe that this city council has much to be proud of when it comes to criminal justice reform. This council passed the first fair chance hiring policy in the southern United States. This council led the state in ending the juvenile curfew earlier this year that resulted in thousands of unjust arrests and tickets. And we believe that you have an historic opportunity to lead this state in rethinking the way that police contracts are negotiated and on what public safety ultimately looks like in this community. I also want to note that there's really a national spotlight on this room tonight. And this community has, I believe, spoken over the last several weeks and months. And I really invite you all to step into that historic opportunity and vote no on this contract today.
Thank you very much. So Bethany Carson will be speaking here. You have 1 minute. I don't show you with any donated time. Anne Marie Clark. Is Anne Marie Clark here? No? What about Bobby Sukahara? No? What about Gilbert Starkley? Oh, I'm sorry. You'll come on down here. Please proceed.
Good evening. My name is Bethany Carson. I'm a resident of District 4. And tonight I'm here to reaffirm those who have testified that we can't keep Austin safe because Austin is not safe for them. It's not safe for the immigrant man who was wrongly arrested, deported, and killed in Mexico after ICE got his information when he was booked into the jail. It's not safe for the homeless woman I spoke with at a meeting last night who was roughed up by some police officers for just sleeping outside of a church, spent the night in jail, and had her belongings seized. And what will make it safe is not 329 more officers, $1,000 signing bonuses, and parole stipends. We need a paradigm shift that recognizes that Austin must invest in mental health treatment programs, preventative health, community centers, schools, all the things that keep us safe and help us thrive way before police are even involved. We will be better off finding a new way forward where 5 years of our social service spending is not held hostage in exchange for accountability and transparency measures that should be expectations, not bargaining chips. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think I skipped Drew De Los Santos. Drew De Los Santos? Is he here? She? I'm sorry, Drew. You'll be up at the next podium. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, Councilpersons, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Gilbert Starkey, a resident of District 9 and a co-founder of 350 Austin. And I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the organization 350 Austin because our steering committee, the decision-making body, voted unanimously to ask you to reject this contract. We believe that this contract does not serve the public interest for several reasons, one of which is the lack of effective and robust civilian oversight, which we believe results in a general lack of transparency into police behaviors and incidents. We believe that granting such concessions to any authority in a democratic society is detrimental to public safety and trust. We see this as an issue that negatively impacts all citizens, as we're fully aware that communities of color are particularly vulnerable. Therefore, on behalf of 350 Austin, I ask each of you to reject the contract before you tonight.
Thank you very much. Is Andrew Herrera here? Andrew Herrera? No? Jet? What? You're here, Andrew Herrera? Okay, come on down. Is Brayton Hawkins here? Yes, okay, you'll have 2 minutes then, Mr. Herrera. Please proceed.
Hi, my name is Drew De Los Santos. I'm a lifelong Austinite. I now live in District 9. The Citizen Review Panel needs teeth to have true review power. Public safety is not just policing. The community has outlined clear other options for this. And So relocate the millions to community enrichment that will provide long-term safety from childhood to adulthood into seniorhood. And it's worth voting no to do better, because there are millions on the line, there are years on the line that are going to be affected by this vote. It's worth it to take a step back and do it again. And we can't afford this. That's why it's so confusing, because you can't afford it. There's not enough money to make it happen. Can't have your cake and eat it too. And every dollar counts, because we cannot count on the state government. We can't count on the federal government. So we need to do our due diligence in protecting our budget. So thank you. I urge you to vote no. I'm very concerned about this.
Thank you. Is Heather Busby here? No? Heather Busby? Okay, no Heather. She left. Spoke already? Okay, we need to cross her off. And then Jasmine Patel. Jasmine Patel. What about Sue Gabriel? What about Julian Reyes? Yes? Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Herrera. I'm a constituent of District 9, and I'm the incoming Vice President for University Democrats at UT Austin. We are here today happily speaking as an organization and myself as a progressive in favor of the reforms that Austin Justice Coalition is pushing forward. And I will tell you that first and foremost, the reason that we are doing that is because we believe it is a proven fact that if they are put into place, if we move forward on better negotiations on these issues, then we will see a police department and a local Austin community, specifically those communities of color, having better relationship going forward. In addition, we want to point out that these reforms are not intended to scapegoat police as responsible for all institutional ills in the criminal justice system. We really want to make sure that going forward we can have the atmosphere to build upon the progress that we have made and that the community has made. I want to make it clear that I'm here today to say that the issues of institutional injustice that the AJC has brought up may not be seen as student issues on the forefront, but we as progressive activists in University Democrats believe that if any group that we care about, that we believe needs to be valued in this community is under attack or feels like they're marginalized, then that's a student issue for us, plain and simple. We also want to point out that going forward, our members, we've surveyed them and we've asked them what their priorities are for us on activism. They've said criminal justice reform. They've said police accountability. These issues, whether people believe it or not, matter to students. They really do, and they want to see you. They want to see their government. They want to see their city that they care about and that they love, Austin, really make some progress on these issues going forward. The city of Austin and APA, in the contract that's been revised, have pointed out that they want to expand the role of the Citizens Review Panel and make sure that the Office of Police Monitor is more empowered. However, we're looking at the context of this. We're looking at the text of this proposed contract. There's so much that is still lacking from this, so much accountability and the 180-day rule, a lot of cosmetic fixes to that, but nothing real. All I say is if we really say that brown and especially black lives matter in this community, then I would implore you, city council members, please put our money and your votes where our mouths are. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Sue Gabriel here? What about Chris Harris? Already spoke. Trish Merrill. Trish Merrill, okay. You'll be up at the podium. Please proceed.
Okay, go ahead and roll the video. This is a video of homeless oppression by the police that went unaccounted for, and there's basically thousands of these kind of videos that I have. This is a young lady here, homeless, in her pajamas, in the cold of night, for littering outside the homeless shelter. So police interference of filming is unconstitutional according to federal law. Many of these officers have assaulted citizens on video and gotten away with it over and over and over again. So we're fast forwarding. Here's inside the soup kitchen, the homeless soup kitchen that the city allows to be a jail on the weekends. This lady's being restrained. She's being cuffed behind her back. They put a belt behind her, all the way around her. And now they're gonna manhandle her, and the sergeant's gonna watch on. And I've shared this on all y'all's websites. It's not done. It just began. She's going to the ground. This is your police department that you're saying has transparency and accountability, and that's a damn lie. You guys know it. This is battery. This is a felony, and your officers are committing felonies, and your chiefs and your OPM don't care. There's Sergeant Huguenet. He's still active. So you guys go ahead and tell me how you're going to keep the police accountable. Thank you.
Is Beverly Lazar here? Beverly Lazar? No? Beverly Lazar? No? Yes? And Beverly, I think you had some people that donated time. Mary Willem? Mary Willem here? No? What about Rebecca Bernhardt? Okay, Ms. Lazar, why don't you come on down? You'll have 1 minute. Go ahead, please.
Mayor Adler and council members, my name is Trish Merrill, and I'm in District 8. I came here to encourage you to vote no on this contract. I've lived in Austin for more than 30 years, and I'm an active member of University United Methodist Church. We do a big outreach to the community. I facilitate an economic and racial justice committee there. Our congregation is involved with feeding and clothing and nurturing the people, the friends that we have that without homes. We offer no-interest microloans to small business people, and we partner with Valle Elementary School, just to name a few. I've learned it's very important to listen to all of our citizens, especially those who are negatively impacted by institutional decisions, in this case, city budget decisions. I appreciate very much the work of the police. I value this profession, and I want to do right by them. I know a little bit about their challenges. My father was a sheriff for 25 years. I urge you to vote against this proposal.
Thank you. So as I look here, I think that is Cameron Staff here? Is Troy Reeves here? Is Pedro Luerio here? I think Scott Gunter we've already had. Is Dominique Alexander here? Yes. Okay. You'll be up next at this podium. Please proceed.
My name is Beverly Lazar, and I'm here to represent District 10. And I really implore this group to vote against the meet and confer. The people of Austin value transparency, accountability, and appropriate oversight of our institutions. These values are not reflected in the current meet and confer agreement. Not included is enough oversight of the police and transparency. Officers are already paid more than any other department in the state. The 180-day rule has a detrimental impact on the community, particularly in the case of Breon King, the African-American teacher who was physically and verbally abused and racially profiled. A few minor improvements, changes that leave the current system substantially in place, will cost Austin $82.5 million. This is way too much for way too little. Police who are untrained and know nothing about de-escalating situations, no knowledge or sensibility regarding people with mental disabilities, and of course racist attitudes towards people of color. There are groups, and I've met with one recently, that say that they will go out to calls about people with mental issues, and I think they could do a much better job. in
Thank you.
APD.
Thank you very much. Is Fatima Mann here? Miss Mann? Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. Take your time. You're not up yet. You're on deck. Hang on. Is Caitlin Sweetlam here? Caitlin here? Is Mimi Stiles here? No? So you'll have 1 minute when you come up. Please proceed.
Hello, my name is Minister Dominique Alexander. I'm the president and founder of the Next Generation Action Network, a national grassroots organization based in Dallas, Texas. I'm here today to stand with my friend and his members of the Austin Justice Coalition. I came to a meeting about a month ago, and I was able to sit in some of the meeting confer discussions and to see the city of Austin pay for transparency is despicable. I come from a city where we're probably like the lowest paid officers, where there's a big pension problem that happened. But at the same time, we're still able to work with our chief of police, and our chief of police endorse a civilian review board with subpoena power and investigative power. So at the same time, we know in order for us all to get there, transparency is key, right? And we should not pay someone for transparency. One of the things I was able to do at the big data conference when I was at...
Would you come on down and give the clerk your name?
When I was at the big data conference, thank you. When I was at the big data conference held by Mimi Stiles and Measured Austin, I was able to see a center called y'all can help me with this. It's a museum. Harvard, what is it? Okay, perfect. I'm from Dallas, y'all. I'm from Oak Cliff, Texas. But I was able to see that there was empty promises, right? And the facility people was able to tell me that there was projects that was probably due for over 15 years, right? Millions of dollars. And then I see $80 million being wasted without even having the city of Austin be able to get something out of it, right? You guys are giving your power away. You are an elected body. You are an elected body that the people elected you to be here to be a voice for them in these critical moments. I see the community. I see police officers keep on talking about the community is watching. I see the community here today telling you to stop. And I see a very diverse community that I don't see in Dallas. Very, very diverse. I was sitting back there telling someone, like, I have never saw this a day in my life where black, blue, green people come together to stand up. Vote against this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure some.
Hang on, just hang on real fast. Is Vance Debes here? Is Gonzalez here? Is Glenda McKinney here? Yes. You'll be up down at this podium, Ms. McKinney.
So I'm pretty sure that I have more time than a minute, you know?
No, you do. Well, you had two people that had donated time, Caitlin Sweetlam and Mimi Stiles.
I had 7 minutes when I signed up, and they told me I was at max, so I don't know if somebody's going to give me any time, but I'm
Mayor? Yes, yeah. If other people want to come down and donate some time.
Who?
So.
And while they're doing that, how y'all doing? Like, we humans in here today. We're not just, here as politicians and community members. Is everybody doing all right? Y'all doing okay? That was a real question. Are we not humans? Did we not wake up this morning? Do we not have to eat and breathe and go to sleep and do all that stuff? Are we not humans? Can we all agree to that? We may be disagreeing right now, but we're humans, right? Oh, okay.
Everybody is. So how many people are donating time? The most you can donate is 4.
Right? Y'all doing okay, though.
You have 4
Hug
minutes.
Somebody. Smile at somebody.
Go ahead and
tell
start.
somebody you love them.
You have 4 minutes.
Cool.
Clock
So,
start.
I'm Fatima. I'm the executive director of Counterviolence ATX, and we oppose you all saying yes to this contract for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to start with, what is a contract, right? So a contract is a promise or a set of promises for the breach of which the law recognizes a remedy. And so what we're talking about is contracts in which parties are supposed to come together and agree on a thing. So a contract has mutual assent. You don't have to be a lawyer to know this, but all parties are supposed to come together and agree. The impact impacted parties, the parties that administer the law, and those who, are over the ones who administer the law. You all, elected officials, you all, the individuals who are, the only reason you are here is because people believed in you, your vision, and the things that you said. So if this is a contract between the people who voted for you and y'all, you are breaching the contract. You breached the contract in not giving people what they asked for. The impacted community, the people who are telling you that they've been damaged, that they've been injured by the police, and the system that recognizes the police as an entity that does not get punished when they need to get punished, is saying that this process sucks. Not only are we saying it sucks, we provided data, and if this was a court case, I'm pretty sure it was like clear and preponderance of evidence have been provided for you, so you could just see it. Instead, we are here talking about a process, a contract process, where people are supposed to mutually assent in a city that is claiming to be liberal and progressive. And because I love Google, you can do this too. Liberalism is a person advocating or implementing social reform or new liberal ideas. Progressive, a group, a person or idea favoring or implementing social reform or new liberal ideas. A relative progressive governor, a relatively progressive city. That is not Austin if we're continuously having the same conversation about the impacted community saying we don't appreciate the process. The process sucks. It doesn't work for us. We're not saying there shouldn't be a process. We're saying if we're going to mutually assent, if we're going to agree, if you're going to be the people who we signed up to, represent us, to speak for us, to vote in our favor because we voted in your favor, then if you don't do that, then you're not progressive, and you're definitely not liberal, and you're actually going towards the whole racism aspect of it. You can't talk about being liberal and if all or most things you do impact black people, brown people, poor people, women, people who identify differently in a way that sucks for us. You can't be progressive and liberal and do the same. So what I ask that you guys think about the humanity of it all. You're not just a council person, you're a human. You're someone loved you enough to put you in this position to let you know that you could be here right now. We're saying that there's a whole bunch of people who are humans that don't get represented, that don't get thought of, that don't get treated as humans by other humans who have a position that says because they have the position, they don't have to treat humans like humans. And that's the problem. We want to have a system that treats us all like humans. And if this system, this whole contracting process, doesn't create us with a system that treats us like humans, then as humans, you should want that to change. And if you don't, then how human are you?
So before you start, I don't remember where I was on this, is Jim Rigby here? Yeah? Okay. And is Mary Fine here? She donated some time to you. And Julia Halpern, is she here? No? You have 2 minutes when she's done. Please proceed.
Howdy, happy Hanukkah. I'm Glenda McKinney. I live in District 9, and I've lived in Austin since 1979. Professionally, I'm an editor and a manager, so when I heard people talking about issues with this contract, I Googled, I found it, I started looking at it for myself. The problem I see is that transparency and citizen oversight is capped at a shockingly low level for 5 years. For 5 years. If you had asked me in 2012 about problems with police, abuse of force, all I would have been able to think of is Rodney King. Think of how much we've learned about problems with policing since then. And I never would have guessed at that point that a union contract would be what determined citizen oversight and what determined transparency into dealing with problems with policing. I'd like for you to reject this contract simply because we can't spend 5 years with this level of transparency and citizen oversight. Thank you.
Sorry. Before you start, is Daniel Portnoy here? No? Okay, when he comes back, make sure he lets me know. Is Leticia Acosta here? No? Is Laura Gran Fortuna here? Yeah? Okay. You'll be at this next mic here. Is Nicole Olmert here? Yes? Then you'll have 2 minutes here. Please proceed. I think you had 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Jim Rigby. I'm a Presbyterian minister here in Austin. We're a sanctuary church, so we know very much what it is like to have people who are vulnerable in the community. I know that people are absolutely sincere when they say that this contract is open and transparent and has accountability. But when you're a person of power in a community, those words mean something very different than when you're vulnerable in a community. And I'd like to do a thought experiment where imagine that you were in a community where you were a minority population, a vulnerable population, and when you turned to YouTube, you saw somebody like you that got shot a lot. And it didn't seem like people ever got in trouble for that. Now imagine you moved to a city and they said that they were transparent and accountable. And by that meant that if somebody shot somebody from your family, that they would have 48 hours to get their alibi straight. Who else in the community gets to do that? Who else in the community gets to go through the evidence that's going to be used against them to see what their storyline needs to be? Who else, when you say that there's accountability, would only have an advisory role in terms of if they wanted to call you to account, instead of being able to actually arrest you or even investigate you, could only give advice to the agency that the person worked in that shot your family? The reason I'm taking this trek is that our country is torn apart right now, and we don't trust one another. And the only answer to that is genuine accountability. And what that means is being able to see the inner workings. When you're a powerful part of the community, that feels very different than when you're under somebody else's heel. So I think Austin, I love the idea of the police being able to do well financially. I love the idea of them being safe. But I think Austin is a model community. And that when we talk about transparency, when we talk about accountability, we should set a model for the entire nation. Not only that the powerful are comfortable, but the people who live in terror when they send their children out simply to go through the streets should know that the community is what watches over law enforcement and calls them to account. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope that you'll vote against this.
Thank you. Is Jana Sims here? You can come. Is Jana Sims here? No? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and you had some time donated to you from Deborah Rod. Is Deborah here? No? You'll have 1 minute when your time comes. Go ahead and introduce yourself. You have 1 minute.
Okay. It's just really frightening to me that there's no provision.
You need to state your name for the record.
What?
Go ahead and state your name for the clerk.
I'm Laura Gran Fortuna, and I'm in District 2. It's just kind of horrifying that there's no provision in this contract for independent investigation, especially in use of force incidents. I wouldn't trust any institution at all to be able to regulate itself and discipline itself. I think that's a completely unrealistic expectation for any organization. And I've heard the chief and a lot of officers tonight saying that they want to do the right thing, and that they believe that they are doing the right thing when they put on their uniforms. And so why not, if you have that confidence in the fact that what you're doing is right, then why not institute those reforms Why not codify them? Why not turn them into law? And ensure that the system is foolproof, that everybody is adhering to those high standards that you believe in.
Thank you very much.